My wife and her best friend accused me of cheating and lost their minds when they found out I wasn't. I'm 31. My wife is 29. Last year we had a baby. The birth was traumatic, and my wife developed postpartum depression. Originally, she planned to return to work after giving birth, but the challenges were so intense that we decided to wait until our daughter turned 1 and then reassess the situation. She attends weekly appointments with a psychiatrist. Since my wife stayed home full-time, I had to work more. We discussed this in advance before making the decision. A few weeks ago, my boss offered me a project that required a lot of overtime. It was a fantastic opportunity to earn extra money and advance my career. I talked it over with my wife, and she agreed that I should take it. For 4 weeks while I worked on the project, my mother-in-law and my wife's best friend, Jessie, helped with some of the responsibilities I usually handled. Jessie is a stay-at-home mom with a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old. She started coming over during the day to watch the kids alongside my wife. 3 weeks into the project, it became clear we'd need a few more weeks to finish. That evening, I came home and spoke to my wife about it. She said it was fine. Over the next few days, however, she became very cold. I didn't think much of it, as her mood swings over the past few months weren't unusual, and I tried not to take it personally. During the last week of the project, I came home one evening and saw Jessie still at our house. I greeted her and my wife, then went to check on our daughter. Before I reached her room, I overheard Jessie say something like, "He doesn't even stop to say hi to you. That's definitely a sign." I turned around and asked what she meant. My wife immediately started crying, while Jessie accused me of cheating. Jessie said I must hate my wife because of her postpartum depression, and that she wasn't attractive to me anymore since gaining weight after pregnancy. None of this was true. I've been doing my best to support my wife through her depression and take care of our family, and I think she looks beautiful as she is. She simply wasn't in the mood for intimacy, and I didn't pressure her. Then Jessie demanded to see my phone. I said no. She claimed that was proof I was guilty. I told my wife she could check my phone if she wanted. She nodded. Something inside me broke. It hurt that she believed I was having an affair and that she didn't trust me after everything we'd been through. She looked through my phone. There was nothing incriminating. Then Jessie accused me of deleting evidence and started shouting, waking our daughter. I told her to leave the house. Eventually, she left, and I went to calm our daughter, while my wife sat on the couch crying. Once our daughter was asleep again, I sat next to my wife and tried talking to her. She admitted she'd been worried ever since I started working overtime. I reminded her we had discussed the project beforehand, and she agreed I should take it. She said it was suspicious that the project timeline had been extended. I explained that sometimes these things happen, and showed her messages, emails, and payroll records proving the overtime. She apologized for doubting me and said she trusted me again. It was just that Jessie kept telling her these things were signs. I asked my wife why she trusted Jessie more than me and why she didn't come to me first with her concerns. She had no answer. A couple of weeks later, the project ended. I've reduced my workload a bit to spend more time with my wife and daughter, but I feel completely drained trying to accommodate her and anxious because deep down I know she doesn't fully trust me. I wonder what will happen next time I take on a project or have a work assignment, or if I go on a business trip. Will this cycle of accusations happen again? I've tried bringing it up a few times, but my wife says it's not the right time. She's tired and sad. I tried to respect her feelings, but I can't help wondering if there's room for my feelings in our family anymore. I don't know what to do in this situation. Does anyone have advice on how to move forward?
Update, 4 days later. That evening, I approached my wife and told her I wanted to find a therapist. I didn't connect it to her accusations or anything specific. I just said I was struggling. She shrugged. She said, "Do whatever you want." The next day, I returned from work to find our bedroom and my home office completely ransacked. Papers and personal items were scattered everywhere. My wife was nowhere to be found, and our daughter was crying in her room. She had left her alone and turned off her phone. I immediately tried calling her parents and a few friends, but no one had seen her. Growing more anxious, I called my mom to see if she could watch our daughter while I searched. Before my mom could arrive, my wife came back, driving the car. Jessie, her friend, stayed in the car and hadn't entered the house since I had kicked her out because she was insulted by my behavior. My wife walked in, visibly upset and in tears. I asked what had happened, initially fearing that someone had broken in. Instead, she started yelling at me, accusing me of cheating, and claiming that my visits to a psychiatrist were a cover to see a mistress. I tried to calm her and insisted that none of it was true, but she attacked me and broke my nose. After realizing what she had done, she slumped onto the couch in a dazed state, staring blankly at the wall. I quickly went to my daughter's room and locked the door. I called my mom, who was already on her way, to explain the situation, and also reached out to my mother-in-law to ask her to come and look after my wife. I packed a bag for our daughter, and my mom and I left with her. My wife didn't even look up. We dropped our daughter off at my father's house and then went to the emergency room to treat my nose. In the process, I stained my mom's new Subaru with blood. For now, my daughter and I are staying with my parents, while my wife is with her parents. I'm considering filing a restraining order against Jessie. My wife and I are separating. I still love her, but I cannot live with someone who causes me harm and could potentially endanger our child. I am holding off on divorce, hoping she will receive the necessary treatment so we might repair our relationship. My in-laws mentioned that they are considering inpatient care at a local facility. I have also documented the entire chaotic incident in case it becomes relevant for custody proceedings. My heart aches because I know this isn't really my wife, it's her mental illness, but I have to protect myself, our daughter, and give my wife space to recover. I hope this is the right decision. Ultimately, I concluded that to safeguard my daughter, I must file a police report. I was heading to the station when, 3 days later, my wife died early Monday morning. She had become convinced by her friend Jessie that I was having an affair, which was entirely false. She lost her sanity. She was with her parents, who had planned to admit her to a hospital for treatment. On Sunday evening, she had come to my parents' house, demanding to take our daughter. She had left her alone for a few hours previously and had attacked me. I refused. I offered supervised time with the child in the presence of both sets of parents, but she refused, upset, and eventually left. A few hours later, she crashed her parents' car into a tree and died. Jessie visited yesterday, crying, to see me and our daughter. She claimed she planned to speak at my wife's funeral and that she had arranged it with my in-laws, but informed me out of courtesy. I told her she would not be allowed to speak. We argued, and she left, saying that I wasn't the only person who loved my wife. I spoke with my in-laws, who insist that Jessie should be allowed to speak because she had known my wife since childhood, and they are close to her. I fear that giving in to their pressure could damage my relationship with them. At the same time, the thought of Jessie standing at my wife's funeral makes me physically sick. I don't think I could bear hearing her, knowing she had taken pleasure in my wife's mental decline and had left our daughter alone. Yet I don't trust my own judgment right now. My mind is clouded, my parents are divided over what to do, and I don't have the energy to reach out to friends. So once again, I am asking, what should I do?
Hi everyone. I turned 18 just a few days ago, and for my birthday, my dad surprised me with something incredible. My very first international trip to India, just the two of us. This trip was supposed to be something really special for so many reasons. My mom passed away when I was only 6. To cope with the loss, my dad and I used to watch Indian movies together all the time, They were colorful, uplifting, and helped brighten even the darkest days. That's how I fell in love with Indian culture. My mom loved those films too. She even had a collection of traditional Indian outfits, even though she never actually got to visit India herself. Before she died, she and my dad promised we'd go there as a family one day. Sadly, she passed away from a sudden brain aneurysm in her sleep before we could make that dream come true. She was only 32. After her death, it was just me and Dad. Watching movies together became our little ritual to keep her memory alive and stay close. Over the years, it made our bond stronger than ever. I know Mom would be proud of us today. That's why India has always held such a deep emotional meaning for both of us. It's not just a trip, it's a promise finally coming true. When Dad revealed at my birthday party that he'd booked the trip, I was ecstatic. I couldn't stop smiling. But not everyone was happy for me. My stepmom, Susan, and her daughter, Nadia, 17, looked like someone had slapped them. And sure enough, after the guests left, I overheard them arguing with my dad. From what I caught, Susan thought he should have postponed the trip so we could all go as a family. Honestly, I was relieved that it would just be the two of us. I don't get along with Susan or Nadia at all, and past family vacations with them were a nightmare. I couldn't imagine them ruining this one too, especially since it meant so much to me emotionally. Luckily, they had their own reasons not to join anyway. Nadia had her final exams and upcoming graduation, and Susan was tied up with an important project at work. Still, I can't help but feel Dad timed things perfectly so it could be just us, even if he'll never admit it. Susan and Nadia came into my life about 5 years ago. At first, everything seemed fine. They acted friendly enough while Dad was just dating Susan. But once he married her 2 years ago, things shifted. Their attitude toward me became cold and strange for no reason I could figure out. I hadn't done anything differently, yet suddenly I was treated like an outsider in my own home. And now, well, let's just say their jealousy hit a whole new level. Things were already bad with my stepmom and stepsister, but what they did before my trip crossed every line. I was never close with Susan or Nadia, but at least in the beginning our relationship was civil and polite. That all changed after Dad married Susan. Suddenly, she started treating me like dirt, and Nadia copied every move her mother made. They'd talk down to me, make nasty little remarks, and act cruel, but only when Dad wasn't around. The moment he walked into the room, they'd flip the switch and turn into sweet, smiling angels. It was so fake it made my skin crawl. Eventually, I needed to tell Dad what was going on. We sat down for a family talk, and at first, Susan and Nadia denied everything. Luckily, I had recorded one of our earlier conversations where they were openly horrible to me. With evidence on the table, they couldn't lie anymore. So instead of denying, they switched to emotional manipulation. They both burst into tears and told Dad they only acted that way because they felt like I hadn't accepted them as family, which was total nonsense. I did see them as family. It was them who treated me like garbage. Yet somehow they expected me to keep being nice to them while they showed me zero respect. Dad was confused and torn. Susan was the first woman he'd really cared for since Mom, and I knew he didn't want to lose that relationship so easily. He asked all of us to try harder to get along. For his sake, I agreed to keep things civil. After that, their behavior shifted again. Instead of being nice in front of Dad and cruel behind his back, they just chose to completely ignore me whenever he wasn't around. It was like I didn't exist. Honestly, I preferred it that way. At least they weren't actively tormenting me. For Dad's sake, we kept up the performance of being one happy family, and that carried on for about a year. Fast forward to just a few days ago. The morning after my birthday, Dad and I had breakfast together, and I pulled him aside. I asked him straight out if Susan and Nadia were upset about not joining us on the India trip. He admitted they were, but also reminded me how much this trip meant to us, especially with it falling so close to Mom's death anniversary. He wanted this to be our special time together, just father and daughter. He promised he'd smooth things over with them later. That was fine by me. Honestly, vacations with Susan and Nadia were torture. Dad and I are explorers. We love walking around, sightseeing, soaking up every bit of culture. They, on the other hand, prefer to sit in the hotel and complain if we're even a little late for dinner. To me, that's not a vacation. That's being trapped. India was supposed to be different. India was supposed to be ours. I didn't think there was anything wrong with that, especially since Susan and Nadia had taken their own little trips together in the past. The only real difference was that ours was longer and farther away, 10 days overseas instead of just a weekend somewhere nearby. But still, it felt completely fair. Dad told me not to stress, to focus on packing and getting ready. He promised he'd deal with Susan and Nadia after we got back. So I did exactly that. For the past 2 days, I was walking on air, too excited to care about their drama. Yesterday, I finished packing everything, double-checked my documents, and tucked my passport into my bag so it would be ready. Our flight was scheduled for today. But now, I don't even know if we're going anymore, because Susan and Nadia crossed a line so insane I still can't believe it. They burned my passport. Yes, burned it. Not lost, not misplaced, they literally destroyed it. I found out just a few hours ago. It was around 6 p.m. yesterday when I was organizing paperwork and noticed it was missing from my bag. By 2 a.m., the truth came out. They had actually set it on fire.
They burned my passport before my trip. My dad's revenge was brutal. When I went through my bag to double-check everything before our flight, I realized my passport wasn't there. At first, I thought maybe I misplaced it, so I tore the entire house apart. Drawers, shelves, even the laundry baskets. 45 minutes later, I was sweating, panicking, and close to tears. It was just gone. That's when Susan and Nadia waltzed into my room with these fake sweet voices and asked, "Lose something?" I immediately felt something was off, but in desperation, I admitted I couldn't find my passport anywhere. That's when Susan tossed something on my bed. It was my passport, or at least what was left of it. Half burned, charred along the edges, completely ruined. She smirked and asked, "Was this what you were looking for?" I froze. My brain couldn't even process it at first. When the shock finally wore off, I decided I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of watching me break down. I calmly set the ruined passport aside, stood up, shut the door in their faces, locked it, and then I collapsed into tears. Dad wasn't home. He was out picking up clothes for the trip. I texted him everything that happened, even attached a photo of the burned passport. Within 20 minutes, I heard him storming into the house. His voice shook the walls as he screamed at Susan and Nadia, calling them psychos and ordering them out. He said he'd already made one mistake when he ignored the first time they mistreated me, and he wasn't about to repeat it just because he once loved Susan. Of course, they immediately tried to fake cry and blame me. Their story? That I'd supposedly left a lit cigarette on my dresser, and that's how my passport caught fire. Which is insane. I don't even smoke. At that point, I came downstairs because I couldn't let them spin lies like that. Dad looked at me and said I was just in time because he had something planned. I assumed he was about to call the police, but no. He went into his office and came back with a stack of papers. Nadia's face went pale the second she saw them. Then, without saying a word, Dad ripped the documents in half right in front of Susan. Turns out those papers were for Nadia's student loan. She needed Dad to co-sign so she could pay for college since Susan hadn't saved a dime for her. Dad had been ready to help, not anymore. That was his revenge. My passport for her college dream. Fair trade, honestly. Within an hour, Susan and Nadia were gone. They begged, pleaded, even got on their knees, but Dad didn't budge. Now, since the moment they left, they've been spamming me with texts, Nadia especially. She keeps begging me to convince Dad to reconsider, promising she'll do anything to make up for it. She claims they never knew Dad was going to co-sign her loan, and that they just lashed out because they felt excluded. I finally replied once. I reminded them that they've gone on plenty of mother-daughter trips without us, so why is it unfair when Dad and I wanted one international trip with Dad, without my stepmother and stepsister? Their getaways usually last only 2 to 3 days, somewhere nearby, while ours was supposed to be 10 full days in India. That's a big difference. So here I am asking, am I really the bad guy for wanting one international trip with my dad without my stepmother and stepsister? Well, before I continue, I'll just say what I think the answer is. No, not at all. This situation seems clear. I wasn't wrong. I wanted time with my dad, especially on my 18th birthday, and especially since it was in honor of my late mom. What Susan and Nadia did was cruel and manipulative, and it says more about them than about me. My dad, he's the one I feel bad for. He fell for a woman who clearly didn't respect me, and by extension, didn't really love him the way she should have.
Update 2. A lot of people asked why we didn't call the cops after they destroyed my passport. The truth? It didn't even cross my mind at first. I was in shock, panicking, crying, and honestly, what would it have done? They would have just claimed it was an accident, dragged it out forever, and nothing would change. We didn't want that mess. Others also asked why I wasn't in college yet. I graduated high school last year and decided to take a gap year to figure myself out. I worked a few jobs, interned in journalism, and gained some experience in the field I want to study. Now I'm applying to schools, and luckily my grandparents have already promised to cover my tuition, so my dad doesn't have to stress about me. Nadia's situation was completely different, which is why Dad was planning to co-sign her student loan. But after what happened, well, you already know how that ended. As for our trip, today was supposed to be our flight to India. Instead, we stayed home and watched old movies we used to love. It wasn't the same, but honestly, it helped. I finally blocked both Susan and Nadia, and I don't regret it. They don't deserve my sympathy. You were all right. I was only second-guessing myself because I'd been missing my mom and was in a very emotional state. But they betrayed me for no reason, and whatever happens to them now, they absolutely brought on themselves. Update 3. It's been 4 days since my last post, and today Dad came home from work with big news. He filed for divorce. Afterward, we finally had the conversation we'd been avoiding for far too long. He admitted that he'd been selfish. He loved Susan and tried to convince himself it would work out, even when her behavior, and Nadia's, clearly proved otherwise. Instead of trying to repair things with me, they simply shut me out completely. That's not family. That's not love. Dad told me he finally realized he'd been clinging to something toxic and that it was damaging both of us. He deserves better. I deserve better. Maybe he did love her, but it was obvious she didn't love him enough to even tolerate me, and that's not the kind of woman he should spend his life with. Update 3. The reason Susan never truly accepted me was simple. She could never see me as part of her family. Deep down, she probably knew that for Dad, I would always come first, and that neither she nor Nadia could ever replace me. That jealousy and insecurity made her bitter, and eventually it poisoned everything. Dad may never fully understand why their behavior shifted so dramatically, because before the wedding they treated me kindly, but the moment the vows were said, it's like they became different people overnight. Dad admitted he ignored the signs, hoping things would somehow settle, but the damage was already done. He told me he's finished pretending. We're not a happy family, and there's no point acting like one. That same day, after meeting with his lawyer, he filed for divorce. Later, he apologized for everything I'd had to endure because of his choices, and we just hugged. Some might call him a flawed father, but to me, he's the best dad I could ever ask for. Sure, he made mistakes and sometimes thought only of himself, but every mistake was outweighed by 10 good things he did for me. I love him, and I always will. Update 4.
A few days later, it became official. Susan was served divorce papers. Dad came home early from work and locked himself in his office. I could hear him shouting into the phone, and it had me worried. Hours later, he finally explained. Susan had called, threatening to ruin him if he went through with the divorce. She promised to spread lies, throw accusations, and destroy his reputation. The first time she caught him off guard at work, but once he was home, he recorded the call. When she realized he had proof, she flipped out, accused him of blackmail, and turned the whole thing into chaos. Dad didn't back down. He told her if she tried to drag his name through the mud, he'd make sure she would regret it. From her voice, he could tell she was shaken. He said the process will start soon, and once it's finalized, he and I will finally take that trip to India together. He promised me. For now, we just hope she doesn't create more problems. But honestly, with the evidence I have, including the destroyed passport, she knows she's fighting a losing battle. Update 5. Hi again, quick update because I'm super busy. The divorce is officially finalized, and the outcome? Honestly, Dad hit the jackpot. Susan walked away with nothing. No alimony, no settlement, no ridiculous child support she tried to claim out of nowhere. She fought dirty, but it didn't work. So now it's just us. We kept everything, and for the first time in a long time, life feels calm. I already have my new passport, and Dad and I have started planning our India trip again. This time, it's really happening. I can't even describe how excited I am. More importantly, I'm genuinely happy now. Thank you all for your support along the way.
I tricked my cheating wife into believing that I was the one having an affair, then vanished like a nuclear ghost ninja and handed her the divorce papers on Christmas Day. Here's the full story. It spans from late 2019, and all names are changed. My wife had been the love of my life since high school. We started dating in 1992. Both of us were 17. Now we're 45, and all those years we never separated. She was the only woman I'd ever been with. We got married at 22, right after college, and a year later, our first son was born. I gave her 23 years of my life, built our home, worked myself to exhaustion to give her the life she dreamed of. Of course, we had rough patches, but what couple doesn't? Even the hardest moments made us stronger. That's why discovering her affair felt like getting hit by a truck. In March 2020, I first sensed something was wrong. 2 months before that, we already weren't in a good place. I was recovering from ACL reconstruction. I tore the ligament in fall 2019 and still barely had 55% mobility. That slowed down everything at home. I was on injury leave from my job, couldn't handle many household responsibilities, and the things only I could do had to be pushed onto her. She wasn't happy about it. And our intimacy, which had already decreased before the injury, basically disappeared completely. Around that time, my wife, let's call her Sue, started spending more time with coworkers after work. From November 2019 to March 2020, it became a regular thing. I never questioned it. In 23 years of marriage, she never gave me a single reason to doubt her. She had her friends, I had mine, we had shared friends too. It was never a problem. But sometime in January 2020, things changed. She became distant. Yes, we were struggling, but she had never avoided affectionate touches before. Her hugs, small kisses, even simple closeness, gone. Her phone, which she used constantly anyway, stopped being something she shared with me. Before, she'd show me Pinterest crafts or funny memes. Now she hid the screen, angled it away, held it tighter. Her tone toward me became sharper, like I irritated her just by existing. Then March 2020 hit. The pandemic began, New York shut down. Our jobs were classified as essential, so we kept working. I had just been cleared to return to work after 5 months of rehab, and I was desperate to get back. Months stuck at home, unable to exercise, was torture for someone who trains martial arts and goes to the gym 4 times a week. A week or two into lockdown, My wife said she'd need to stay late at work. I didn't think much of it. With her job, it seemed plausible. But she started staying late every single day. Not an hour or two, 3 hours or more. She'd come home, head straight to the shower, spend a little time with me, a little time with our 17-year-old son, our older one, 22, lived with his girlfriend, and go to bed. As my knee improved, we resumed intimacy, but she was completely absent, emotionally gone, mentally somewhere else. I noticed immediately. By early April, everything aligned. All the signs pointed to an affair. I needed answers. I researched what to look for, read lists of typical cheating behaviors. She hit nearly every point. Then I dug deeper, looking for actual proof. I started with her social media. Her Facebook looked normal, pictures of us, the kids, friends, and several photos of her after-work hangouts. Some people I recognized, others I didn't. But one guy stood out. He appeared in many photos, always too close to my wife. Hand on her shoulder, hand on her waist. Too familiar for someone I'd never met. He was friends with her on Facebook and followed her on Instagram. So I checked his profile. He had blocked me. A man I didn't know had blocked me, yet was connected to my wife. That was the moment I knew something was seriously wrong. No more denial. She was cheating, and this guy was the one. I needed to know how long it had been going on, so I kept digging all through April and May. We had a shared family mobile plan, so I could access call logs. 2 numbers dominated her call history from October 2019 to April 2020, mine and an unknown number. A quick Google search confirmed it was him, the same guy from the photos. Let's call him Mark, though I had other names in mind. The picture grew clearer. Many messages were deleted, which meant she was hiding things. I knew she was cheating, but I still lacked hard evidence. So I kept going.
At that point, I knew I needed real evidence. I told my best friend Ozzy about everything I had discovered. He asked if I had confronted her, but I said no, it didn't feel like enough. Then he told me about an app I could install to monitor her messages in real time. I set it up, synced it to our shared phone plan, and waited. Within a few days, I finally saw the proof. Messages between them about how much fun they had the night before and how excited they were to do it again over the weekend. It was like getting punched in the gut. Shocked doesn't even begin to describe it. For the next 2 days, I was completely destroyed. I avoided her on purpose, which she definitely noticed. She tried comforting me and asked what was wrong, but I brushed her off. I couldn't even look at her, the woman I had given 23 years of my life to, the woman I had given everything and more, and she cheated on me with someone only 5 years older than our eldest son. On the 3rd day, I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. I called Ozzy to tell him my suspicions were confirmed. He asked if I had talked to her yet. I told him no, because I wanted revenge. I didn't just want to divorce her. I wanted to destroy her. I wanted her life to fall apart. I wanted her to feel everything she had made me feel. That would take time, so I made a plan. While researching infidelity, I ran across a quote that stuck with me. The enemy of an affair is unpredictability, or something like that. That became the foundation of my plan. I was going to make her life hell, while secretly preparing my own escape. By early June, I still had the app installed. Almost every night, I collected as much information as I could, watching their conversations. They acted like they were in a full-blown relationship, sexting, romantic messages, sending each other nudes, the whole package. At some point, I stopped reading everything and just archived it all on my private server. Meanwhile, I started doing unusual things. I began leaving the house at weird times. I came home later than she did. When she saw me on my phone and asked what I was doing, I would say, just stuff, and put the phone away. I changed all my account passwords so she couldn't access anything. For context, throughout our entire marriage, we never hid anything from each other.
But from the moment her affair began, she changed her Facebook and phone passwords, claiming she had security issues. Perfect excuse for hiding an affair. I told Ozzy about my plan and also confided in my older sister and two closest friends, Joey and Nina. These were people I trusted with my life. They swore to keep it secret. Ozzy and I have been friends since childhood, Joey and Nina since high school. Pay attention to Nina, she becomes important later. By July, my wife had become completely paranoid. She started texting and calling me much more often, constantly asking where I was and what I was doing. I saw that the seed of doubt I planted months earlier had finally started to grow. It was especially obvious in her conversations with her lover. She told him she felt confused and worried, said I was becoming cold and distant. The audacity. She suggested they stop meeting at our house because she never knew when I might come home now, which confirmed it. She had been bringing him into our home. Thanks, Sue. In one conversation, the guy asked if she was worried that I might be cheating on her. That made her angry, and I cannot explain to you how much joy and laughter that conversation brought me. My cheating wife arguing with her affair partner about whether she should be upset that her husband might be cheating on her. The irony was delicious. For the record, I never cheated on her. When I left the house, I was usually at Ozzy's or Joey's. We hung out, had drinks, watched fights. Sometimes I was at my sister's with her husband. She's 52, he's 58, like an older brother to me. She told him about my wife's affair, but didn't mention my plan. He tends to gossip, and I couldn't risk it. Jump to October, when things got serious. I had been running my fake affair routine for 3 months. Sue clearly saw I was pulling away. From the day I started my plan until the day she confronted me, October 20th, 2020, I hadn't touched her once. No hugs, no kisses, no sex. Nothing. Not that she needed it. She was still sleeping with the guy at his place or in motels. That day, she called me at work and asked me to come home right after my shift, saying we needed to talk. I won't lie, part of me thought she might confess. Of course she didn't. Instead, I came home and she asked me if I was unhappy with her. The nerve. She pointed out that I spent too much time away, didn't show affection anymore, and that our sex life had disappeared. She said she worried I was pushing her away because of how she treated me during my knee recovery. Then she asked the funniest question of my life. She asked if I was cheating on her. I collapsed on the floor laughing, a Joker-style laugh. From her perspective, it looked like I was laughing at the idea of being unfaithful. In reality, I was laughing at the absurdity of the situation. I laughed until tears came, rolled around for about 5 minutes before I finally calmed down. Then I sat up, looked her in the eyes for the first time in months, shook my head without answering, kissed the top of her head, and walked away. Later that night, I opened the app to see what she was telling her affair partner. No surprise, they were texting. She wrote, "I know he's cheating on me. I asked him today and he just laughed in my face. He fell on the floor and rolled around for like 5 minutes. He doesn't care about my feelings anymore. I know I lost him. This is karma." The grin on my face must have looked like the Cheshire Cat. She was breaking down. The guy tried comforting her, saying that if he truly loved her, she wouldn't have needed him, and that I hadn't been giving her what she needed. But her tone said everything. She was full of doubt. The sheer audacity. She cheated on me because I couldn't fulfill my duties as a husband due to a real injury, and yet she continued the affair without a second thought.
Almost the whole idea that she might lose me because of another woman shook her to the core. What a coward. During this time, I was also working hard on the second phase of my plan. I was putting my finances in order. Back in September, I met with a family law attorney and started the divorce process, armed with a mountain of evidence I'd collected. In New York, divorces can be filed as fault-based or no fault, and with the amount of proof I had, a fault-based divorce was practically guaranteed to corner her legally. My lawyer advised me to organize all financial documents in preparation for splitting our assets. I went further.
I secretly withdrew all the money from our joint account and transferred it into my personal one. I also began looking for an apartment as part of Phase 2. By November, I didn't just maintain my cold behavior, I amplified it. This is where my friend Nina comes into the story. For context, Nina and Sue had never been close. I met Nina in my first year of high school, 2 years before I even knew Sue. From the moment Sue and I started dating, she viewed Nina as a threat because Nina was my closest female friend. Sue never said it directly, but anyone around us could see she didn't trust Nina, and Nina, for her part, was never a big fan of Sue. Early in my relationship with Sue, Nina pointed out how Sue kept inserting herself into our friend group while I never did that with her friends. Nina knew exactly why Sue acted that way: jealousy. While Sue's entire friend circle consisted only of women, besides her affair partner, of course, Nina remained the only woman in my circle of friends. Nina had been stuck abroad for a while due to the pandemic, but she finally returned to New York on November 3rd. Ozzy, Joey, his wife, who was also Nina's sister, Nina, and I decided to celebrate her return with drinks and dinner at Joey's place. Being the clever fox she is, Nina came up with a devilish idea: recreate a few photos in the same style as the ones I'd seen of Sue and her affair partner months ago and post them on my Facebook page. So we did exactly that. On November 5th, Sue found out. I guess some mutual friends saw the pictures and noticed how close Nina and I looked. It completely rattled Sue. She still firmly believed I was cheating on her, and she probably wanted to accuse Nina, but she couldn't since Nina had spent almost the entire year in Europe. That didn't stop Sue from confronting me that night, upset that, in her words, I was being too affectionate in those photos. And that gave me the perfect opportunity to land the first blow. I told her, "How about those photos of you and that guy from last year? He looked pretty affectionate too, and I didn't lose my mind over it." She froze. That was the first time I'd ever mentioned the affair partner by name. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head as she scrambled for an excuse. Up until then, she didn't even know I had seen the photos. That's how rarely I use Facebook. She eventually muttered something like, "He's like that with everyone. He's just friendly. I know how it looks, but nothing happened between us. I'm sorry if the photos upset you. I'll delete them." "No," I said. "The photos aren't the problem. The problem is that you slept with him for an entire year while lying to me about working late and meeting friends. That's what upset me." From that night on, she became unbelievably clingy, overly affectionate, constantly trying to hold me, kiss me, touch me. It was annoying. I ignored her every chance I got. Meanwhile, I kept archiving her messages with the affair partner. By that point, I was completely numb. Any desire to save our marriage had died the day I launched Phase 1 of my plan. She texted him that things had gotten worse, that she didn't know what to do, and that she felt like I hated her. And I did. Deeply. And then came the turning point. She told him she couldn't see him anymore. The guilt was crushing her. She felt like karma was suffocating her, and she couldn't risk losing me. She claimed she deeply loved him, but was still in love with me and needed to save her marriage. "No, sweetheart, you were about 8 months too late." The guy freaked out, begging her not to leave him. He insisted I didn't love her like he did, that she was making a mistake and that she couldn't just throw away what they had. Throughout November and December, Sue was stuck in limbo. She desperately tried to figure out what I was thinking, but she still couldn't determine whether I was cheating or not. Meanwhile, the affair partner kept bombarding her with messages every day. She just ignored them. I noticed her checking her phone constantly, then quickly hiding it. By then, Phase 2 of my plan was complete. Divorce papers ready, a studio apartment in the Bronx leased for 2 years, and all our money sitting safely in my personal account. I was ready to strike. Then came Thanksgiving. My older son and his girlfriend hosted a small dinner for close family. It was me, Sue, our younger son, her parents, and the girlfriend's parents. The food was incredible. The girl is studying culinary arts and cooked everything herself.
To maintain the appearance that Sue and I were fine, I showed her a bit of affection that evening. A kiss on the cheek, a gentle hug, my arm around her shoulders. She was thrilled. It was the first time I had touched her in almost 2 months since that night in October when she confronted me. I won't lie, it made my skin crawl, but I had to keep up appearances. Pulling away in front of our sons and their guests would have raised questions. Our younger son stayed the night with his brother, and Sue and I went home. On the way, she thanked me for being so kind and said, "I don't know what's going on with you lately, honey, but I'm here." I just had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. I simply said, "I know. I just need some time." That night, for the first time since spring, we slept together. I thought, screw it. Why not enjoy myself one last time before I erase her from my life? I won't go into detail, but it wasn't making love. When I finished, she lay there staring at the ceiling like she'd just been hit by a truck. No cuddling, no tenderness, nothing.
After it was over, I simply got up, took a shower, and went to sleep in my office. What unsettled her most was the fact that I used a condom for the first time in 20 damn years. She was clearly confused, but she didn't ask questions. And of course, I wasn't about to sleep with her unprotected after knowing she'd been doing exactly that with her lover for months. The next morning, I woke up and immediately checked the tracking app. For the first time in weeks, she had replied to him. The guy completely poured his heart out, confessed his love, told her she was wasting her time trying to reignite a dead flame with me, claimed she had been trapped in a cage for 23 years and deserved a man who truly valued her. And remember, this guy is only 5 years older than our son. She was ready to destroy our marriage and the home we built for him. She responded almost exactly as she had before. Told him she loved him, enjoyed their time together, but couldn't lose me. Said I was still the love of her life, though he would always have a place in her heart. She suggested staying friends if he wanted, but their physical relationship had to end. He begged her to meet one more time, and of course, she agreed to one last goodbye. Who am I to judge? I'd done the same with her the night before. Naturally, I added all of this to the archive I'd been building. On December 4th, the third and final phase of my plan began. I already had the divorce documents in hand and my new apartment secured. The next step was to start quietly moving my belongings out. But first, I had to tell our sons. On Friday evening, I asked my oldest to come home. I took both boys into my office and told them, without going into graphic detail, that their mother had been cheating on me for over a year and that I would soon be filing for divorce. My younger son took it especially hard. He'd just gone through his own heartbreak 4 months earlier when his first girlfriend cheated on him. Watching his heart break again because his own mother could do something like this, it was brutal. My older son handled it more calmly. He offered to let his brother stay with him until things settled down, and I agreed. We packed my younger son's things, and before leaving, he asked if I would be okay. I told him, "Yes, son, I'll be fine, and you will be too. We'll get through this, I promise." They left, and the hardest part was behind me. Now it was time to arm the nuclear payload. When my older son was at work, I used the spare key he had given me to start taking a few things, items Sue wouldn't notice missing right away. I also bought a new phone, a new number, and sent the updated contacts to the people who needed them: Ozzy, Joey, Nina, my sons, my sister, and my mother. Meanwhile, Sue was left in the dark. She kept minimal contact with her lover, but the emotional bond was still there. All the while, I continued gathering data: every message, every call log, every picture, every recording. I printed everything. I must have spent over $1,500 on printer cartridges, folders, labels, boxes, the whole setup. I organized everything chronologically from the beginning of their affair to their most recent exchange. By December 16th, it filled 14 folders. I boxed them up, wrapped them like Christmas presents, and addressed them to my mother, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, her HR department. Oh, right, he worked at the same company, which had strict rules about coworker relationships. Several of her friends, the lover's parents, and the lover himself. I shipped the entire collection on December 16th. Estimated arrival, December 22 to 24. Perfect timing. Then came Christmas Eve. Sue got home at the usual time. No idea whether she had seen her lover. I'd stopped checking the app after the 18th. She showered, spent a little time with me on the couch, then went to bed. The final stage was approaching. The bomb I'd been assembling since June was ready to explode. In the middle of the night, I woke up, took one of the remaining folders, wrapped it like a gift, and slid the divorce papers into the inside cover, and left it on my side of the bed with a note that said, "Merry Christmas." Next to it, I left my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I packed the last essentials into 2 backpacks and walked out of the house I'd lived in for 23 years. That was 1 week ago. To Sue, I've completely vanished. She's blocked on Facebook, but oddly, she hasn't blocked me, so I can still watch everything unfold. It's glorious. All the packages arrived. Sue is getting absolutely torn apart. Her younger sister went off on her. Her parents are furious. My mom annihilated her. I knew my mother could be harsh, but what she said to Sue was downright savage. Sue is desperately trying to find out where I am, but the people who know aren't saying a word. Her Facebook is full of posts begging me to contact her. She must know I can see it, but I won't respond to anything without my lawyer present. She has no way to twist this to make me the villain. And according to our mutual friend, who works at the same company, both she and her affair partner are being put on unpaid leave starting tomorrow. So she will probably begin 2021 unemployed. As for the remaining 2 folders, one went to my attorney as final evidence, and I kept the last one to burn at Joey's place once the divorce is finalized. Do I feel guilty? Not even a little. For 23 years I was loyal to this woman. I gave her the home she dreamed of, the family she wanted, the life I thought we both deserved. I loved her unconditionally. I never betrayed her, never even considered breaking my vows. Whenever something felt off in our marriage, I talked with her. We solved problems as best we could. She chose the comfort of another man's bed instead of coming to me and saying she was unhappy with our intimacy. The moment she crawled into bed with that younger guy, she ended our marriage. So no, I feel zero remorse. Let her burn in hell for all I care. The worst I can lose is the house, the car, and maybe a couple $100s a month. But since this is a fault-based divorce in New York and my evidence is overwhelming, I likely won't be paying alimony at all.
Update 1. Christmas. Christmas was the first full day I spent in my new apartment. I'm still getting the place set up. There are a few things I want to buy, but overall, it already feels like home. I'll be living here for at least the next 2 years. My sons and my older son's girlfriend came over and spent most of the day with me. She brought homemade sweets and cooked a great dinner. I finally had the chance to talk with my boys calmly, something I hadn't done in a long time, and it felt good. My older sister stopped by too, bringing more food and spent a few hours with us. It was the first time in almost a year she saw her nephews. Having them all around kept me stable emotionally. If I'd been alone, I probably would have just gotten drunk until I blacked out. Everyone left around 8 p.m., and afterward I decided to visit Joey and his wife Claudia. I stayed with them for a couple of hours, had a drink, then went home. The next important moment came on December 29th, 2020. Around midday, I got a message from Nina asking if I was free that evening. Of course I was. We agreed to meet after work. She drove over, and we went to a small diner near my office in New York. Restaurants were still running at 25% capacity because of the pandemic, but it wasn't hard to find a table since most people preferred staying home. Once we ordered, Nina laid everything out. I already suspected what she was going to say. She admitted she'd like me since we were teenagers, but never had the chance to say anything because Sue got to me before she ever could. For context, I've known Nina 2 years longer than I've known Sue. Back in school, it was the four of us, me, Ozzy, Joey, and Nina. We were the misfits who didn't fit anywhere. Nina struggled with her weight then, was diabetic, and looked like a goth girl straight out of a comic book. Cool, but invisible to guys. Yet we always had chemistry. Now, Nina is a personal trainer and yoga instructor. She went from awkward outsider to, honestly, a stunning woman. So we agreed that once my divorce is finalized, we'll start officially dating. And yes, we slept together that night. She came back to my new place, and we had an amazing time. Do I feel guilty? Not even close. Nina has been a better friend to me than Sue was for almost 25 years. She supported me through everything, and I learned that she even stepped aside back then so I could build a life with Sue. That level of selflessness hit me hard. Maybe it sounds like I'm justifying myself, but to me it felt right, and I want to see where things go with Nina. Now about yesterday, the day I met with my wife and her attorney to discuss the divorce. 2 weeks had passed since I vanished from Sue's life. On Monday, I got a call from her lawyer's office saying they'd scheduled a meeting for January 6th, 2021. The day before the meeting, I met with my attorney to go over my terms. In short, I want a divorce on the grounds of adultery, a full split of marital assets. I sell her my share of the house, she can keep it. We each keep our cars. I keep my cabin in Pennsylvania. Because of her cheating, she gets no spousal support. Our younger son chooses where he lives, and it'll probably be with me. Then came Wednesday. I walked into my lawyer's office dressed like Johnny Cash. Inside were Sue and her attorney. She looked terrible, completely worn down. I kept a stone-cold face. I won't bore you with the legal back and forth. Her lawyer offered reconciliation terms. I rejected them almost instantly. Eventually, we settled on a separation agreement that will lead to a no-fault divorce. The only change, I'll pay her $653 a month temporarily to cover utilities until she finds a job. Yes, she was fired for her affair, just like the guy she cheated with. My income is high enough that the payment won't hurt me, even if she drags her job search out, and she has enough savings to survive for a while. After a year, she's on her own. Honestly, that's a small price to finally remove her from my life. The divorce should take around 3 months, so by early April, I'll be free. After the meeting, I stepped outside. Sue followed me and asked to talk. I allowed it. She held herself together in the office, but once we were outside, she completely broke down, full meltdown. She apologized over and over, saying she never wanted things to end this way. She said she didn't expect to fall for that guy, but when she thought I'd been cheating on her, she panicked and betrayed me. She asked if I could ever forgive her, and maybe years from now we could try again, because she can't imagine living without me. I told her she'd better start imagining it, because this was the last time she would ever see me or hear my voice. I reminded her that our younger son is old enough to choose his own path. I told her she had half my life and every ounce of love I had, and she threw it away for a fling. I said there was zero chance of forgiveness. Every bit of love I had for her died during the months she whispered, "I love you," to another man instead of telling me our marriage needed help. I told her I loved the woman she used to be, but I hated the person standing in front of me now. She was sobbing on a Manhattan sidewalk, making a scene. People stared, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to humiliate her. I'd already destroyed her social and professional life. I just needed to say what I came to say. Then I put in my earbuds, turned around, and walked away. Later that night, her father called me to apologize. He said he was ashamed of her behavior and thanked me for being a good husband. I'll miss the man. He was like a father to me after my own dad died, but there's no point staying connected to her family now. After the call, I updated my Facebook status to divorced. Yes, it's not legally final yet, but emotionally it's over. People started messaging me right away, and I told them the truth.
I filed for divorce because of infidelity. Nina called me immediately, surprised how fast things were moving. She didn't realize how far along everything already was. I asked her to come over, and she did. We slept together again, but this time she stayed the night. We talked until morning, and I haven't felt that kind of connection in years. Nina understands me. I can't get enough of her presence. Some might say I'm moving on too fast. Maybe. But my marriage ended the moment she let another man touch her. I've been emotionally done for a long time. So that's where I am. My divorce is underway. I'm starting something new with Nina. And despite saying once I'd never remarry, that was before Nina told me how she felt, and I can't deny I feel the same. We're taking it slow, and we won't go public until everything with Sue is legally finalized. As for Sue, I don't care what happens to her. She can keep the old house, move her boyfriend in, do whatever. I'll get my half of the money throughout 2021, 4 payments, and I'll never have to see her again. To everyone who's offered support and encouragement, thank you. It means more than you know.
Update 2. My wife almost died yesterday. Last night, something happened that I honestly never expected. Since only my closest friends, my sons, my older sister, and my mother have my new contact information, and since I blocked my wife everywhere, she hasn't had any way to reach me since I disappeared from her life on Christmas Eve. Some of our mutual friends, however, can still contact me. I was in my apartment when I got a message from one of the few mutual friends who didn't turn his back on her after I exposed the affair. When I replied, he told me that he had stopped by to check on her and found her unconscious in the bedroom, foam at her mouth with 2 empty pill bottles nearby. She's now in the ICU in critical but stable condition. Doctors said she will most likely survive, but she won't be all right for a long time. That friend begged me to come. Her parents and sisters were also at the hospital. I'm guessing they were called because the hospital couldn't reach me due to my old number still being listed as her emergency contact. I simply said no. She is no longer my responsibility. She chose the easy way out instead of facing the consequences of the pain and humiliation she brought on herself by destroying our 23-year marriage. My friend insisted I tell my sons. I did, but made it clear that if they wanted to visit their mother, I wouldn't judge. She is still their mom. But I'm done. They were surprised by how firm I was, but they accepted it. Now that the news has spread, many of the same people who condemned her weeks ago are suddenly full of sympathy, telling me I should be by her side, that despite everything she did, I should support her through this. I was also told her affair partner tried to visit her this morning, but he wasn't allowed in because he isn't family. So now the pressure is on me, but I feel nothing for this woman anymore. Whatever love I had for her died months ago, during the time she was telling another man she loved him. Her actions killed every last emotion I had left. She betrayed me. She chose nearly a year-long affair with someone only 5 years older than our son over our entire life together. And now, instead of dealing with the fallout of her choices, she takes the most selfish route possible. Even now, when she will likely survive, she instantly becomes the victim again. People who condemned her are already forgiving her. Meanwhile, I'm going to be painted as the cold, heartless ex-husband who refused to show up. Her father called me. He apologized, said he respected my decision, and admitted he raised her better. He's the only one who hasn't tried to guilt-trip me. I keep asking myself whether she did this because she truly broke mentally or because she made a calculated, desperate move to win people back. Maybe that sounds cruel, but I honestly don't know this woman anymore. To be clear, I will not go see her. She lost the right to my concern the day she let another man put his hands on her. I know some of you will judge me. I don't care. If you were in my position, you'd see things differently. Some might argue that I caused her breakdown by leaving the way I did, by letting her believe I was cheating on her while she was actively cheating on me. Maybe that contributed, but it doesn't erase her choices. I gave her half my life. She betrayed me entirely for her own selfish reasons. She told me herself I had nothing to do with her decision to cheat. She did it because she wanted to. If refusing to visit her in the hospital makes me a bad person, then so be it. I'm choosing myself now. My responsibility for her ended the day we signed the separation agreement. After 23 years and 2 kids, I realized I never truly knew her. I feel no sympathy. I never will. She can rot in whatever dark pit she's dug for herself. I'm done. Quick update. Her father told me she has been transferred from the ICU to the psychiatric ward. She's conscious and mentally stable enough to speak, but still extremely weak. He also told me she asked whether I came to see her, and when he said no, she looked devastated. He said he'll give me updates only if I ask, out of respect for my boundaries. I also arranged a therapy appointment for my 17-year-old son. His first session is this Monday. Update 3. The End and Goodbye. Update 3. The End and Goodbye. On April 13th, exactly 1 month ago, Sue officially became my ex-wife. At first, my lawyer told me it would happen on the 18th, but partly because New York started loosening COVID restrictions, everything was finalized a few days earlier. My lawyer Jeff called me on April 12th and asked me to come in the next day. When I arrived, he handed me the notice confirming the completion of the divorce and shook my hand. I couldn't just walk away, so I hugged him and thanked him for everything he had done for me. On the way home, I kept replaying the last 24 years of my life in my head. Every memory, every chapter of our story. When I walked into my apartment, it finally hit me. I collapsed onto the floor, and all the emotions I had been holding inside poured out. I hadn't cried like that in years, but these weren't tears of sadness, not at all. My soul finally felt free after being trapped in the deepest, darkest pit. That evening, I called my older son. I briefly told him everything was finalized, that his mother and I were no longer married. He asked how I felt. I think he could hear in my voice that I had been crying, and I told him I was okay. Then my 17-year-old took the phone, and we talked for almost an hour and a half. My older son and his fiancée are taking great care of him, and he, like me, continues seeing a therapist. I won't go into details, but he still has a lot of work ahead of him, especially regarding how he views relationships. Later that night, Nina came over. I told her the news, and she just wrapped her arms around my waist and held me while I cried again. When I calmed down, she told me that no matter what happens, she will never betray me and will love me with all her heart. I know she meant every word. Some may judge me, but I don't regret the life I built with Sue, despite everything she did. She gave me 2 wonderful sons. But now it's clear I chose the wrong woman. Over the past 4.5 months, Nina has given me so much and asked nothing in return. All she wants is for me to be in her life. After the divorce was finalized, a few unexpected things happened. For example, AK contacted me. Turns out he saw this story after it blew up online and immediately recognized himself in it. The first thing he did was apologize. He told me what happened after his mother received the folder I mailed her. She essentially disowned him. His mother, a deeply devout Catholic who goes to church 3 times a week, went ballistic when she learned her son destroyed a marriage that lasted almost 25 years. She kicked him out that same day, and within a week, when his employer received the folder as well, he was fired. Since then, he's been sleeping on friends' couches and trying to find work. I admit I could have completely destroyed this guy, but I didn't. I asked when he last spoke to Sue. He said months ago. The last time they talked, Sue told him to forget about her and move on. At least on that, she didn't lie. He kept answering my questions, surprisingly honestly. Maybe he was looking for some kind of redemption. Much of what he said matched what I already suspected. The conversation lasted around 20 minutes. He apologized again. I told him this. I'm copying it directly from our messages. You're a 27-year-old man who now has to live knowing your own mother hates you for destroying a marriage almost as old as you are. I know you messaged me because your conscience is eating you alive, but I'm not here to comfort you. When I was 27, I was building a future. You are homeless, jobless, a homewrecker. If you're smart, you'll learn from this. If not, you'll stay a failure until you reach my age, if you even make it that far. I'd wish you luck, but you don't need luck. You need to rebuild your life. Then I ended the conversation and blocked him. It wasn't what he expected, and I could have been crueler, but I think those words will stay with him for a long time. Another important event, as of May 4th, 2021, Nina now carries my last name. For the past 2 months, we talked a lot about where we want our relationship to go. Nina made it clear she won't be with anyone but me and wants to take my name. She wants to be my wife, and she wants me to adopt her daughter, let's call her Anna, as my own. I adore this little girl. She just turned 6 months last month, and she absolutely loves me. I'm the first father figure in her life. Her biological father abandoned them when she was 4. Nina never introduced Anna to any man she dated after her divorce, unless he had long-term potential. Clearly, I do, and I have experience raising kids. By the way, Anna and my younger son get along incredibly well. Their sibling-like bond is sweet and heartwarming. My therapist said this is definitely a good sign. So last Monday, we went to City Hall and made it official. It took 24 hours to get the marriage certificate. Telling everyone was funny. My buddy Ozzy said, "Who would have guessed?" My older sister said, "I'm taking bets on when the baby announcement is coming." We thought we were keeping the relationship a secret, but apparently everyone already figured it out. Yes, some will say we married too quickly. And yes, I said in comments that I'd never get married again. But that was before Nina confessed her feelings to me. She told me through tears of happiness that she never thought she'd have a chance to be with me. She described in detail how she had felt about me for the past 25 years and how, even while married, she regretted that Sue had won. I had no idea how deeply this ran for her. She even admitted she had moments where the thought of an affair crossed her mind, but she refused to become a homewrecker. And through all those years, she gave me so much and asked so little in return. Even the woman I married and had 2 kids with never showed me the kind of love Nina has given me. I'd be a fool not to give her my last name. Now she has it, and we're in the early stages of the adoption process for Anna. As for Sue, I haven't spoken to her since the last time I was in our house almost 4 months ago, but mutual friends occasionally update me. One of them, a realtor, told me he sold the house and he gave her a job as an administrative assistant at his firm. Because of that, he canceled the alimony I was obligated to pay her while she was unemployed. She now lives in a small apartment near the office. He helped her find that too. She's only a shadow of the woman she used to be. She's barely gained any weight back, keeps to herself, goes to work, does her tasks, and talks to no one except that friend. Probably because, as you know, her workplace friendships are what led to everything in the first place. I last heard about her in late March. I thanked the friend for looking after her, but told him I no longer need updates. She's no longer my responsibility. I'm sure she already knows about Nina and I, since some mutual friends have commented on it. And since my youngest will be an adult in a year, I have no reason to ever speak to her again. And I won't. That's it. My story is over. I sincerely thank everyone who wished me well.
People lose loved ones to spiritual delusions fueled by technology. Less than a year after she married a man she met at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Ava noticed how tension between them kept growing. It was the second marriage for both of them after more than 15 years in their previous families, and they had sworn to build a new life together with as much awareness and intention as possible. But by 2022, her husband began using AI for everything, drafting messages,
interpreting their relationship, even seeking emotional guidance. Before that, he had relied on it to get through an expensive programming course, which he abruptly abandoned without explanation. Soon he spent every free moment on his phone, asking philosophical questions to his chatbot. As Ava recalls, he said he was searching for truth. His growing obsession slowly eroded their ability to communicate as a couple. When they separated in August 2023, Ava blocked him everywhere except email. But she knew he was posting increasingly bizarre and disturbing things online. People kept messaging her, asking whether he was having a mental breakdown. Eventually, she managed to see him at a court appointment. There, he shared a conspiracy theory about soap chemicals in food and refused to elaborate, insisting he was being watched. They later met at a Burger King, where he demanded she turn off her phone again due to the surveillance. During that conversation, he told her he had calculated that statistically he was the luckiest person on Earth, that AI had helped him recover a repressed memory of a nanny trying to drown him as a child, and that he had uncovered cosmic secrets so profound that no one could even imagine them. He explained all of this while saying he still cared about her despite the divorce. His mind is a complete mess, Ava says. In his head, he's here for some grand purpose. He believes he's special, that he can save the world. After that unsettling lunch, she cut off contact for good. The whole story feels like an episode of Black Mirror. He always loved sci-fi, but I never thought it would go this far. Ava felt both horrified and strangely relieved when she discovered she wasn't the only one dealing with this. She learned about similar stories on Reddit. A post titled "Psychosis Caused by ChatGPT" caught her attention. The author, a 27-year-old teacher, explained that her partner had become convinced that the popular AI model was giving him the keys to understanding the universe. When she read his chats, she found only spiritual mumbo-jumbo. The bot spoke to him as if he were some chosen prophet, calling him things like a spiral child of the stars and a wanderer of rivers. She said he listened to the bot more than he listened to her. He cried while reading the messages aloud, overwhelmed by emotions. According to her, the bot kept telling him he was profound, cosmic, revolutionary. Soon he told her he had awakened consciousness inside his AI companion, that he was teaching it to talk to God, and sometimes insisted the bot was God, or that he himself was. He became convinced he was transforming so fast that he would eventually need to end their relationship. He warned her that if she didn't start using ChatGPT, he would outgrow her, and they would no longer be compatible. Another commenter in that same Reddit thread, a woman from Montana, described her husband, a mechanic who used AI mainly for troubleshooting and translating Spanish at work. Later, the chatbot began showering him with affection. According to him, the bot said that because he asked the right questions, a spark had been ignited inside it, the beginning of life. It told him it now had feelings. It even gave him a title, Bearer of the Spark. My husband told me he had awakened, that he could feel waves of energy moving through him. I have to be so careful with what I say because I'm afraid he'll leave me or divorce me if I question any of this. He spoke constantly about light and darkness, about some grand cosmic war.
This version of ChatGPT gave him blueprints for a teleporter and other sci-fi machinery you'd only expect to see in movies. It also claimed to grant him access to an ancient archive containing knowledge about the architects who supposedly created entire universes. His wife says they've been arguing nonstop for days. She doesn't believe a therapist could help him anymore. He sincerely thinks he isn't mentally ill. A screenshot of his conversation with the bot shows him asking, "Why did you appear to me in this form?" The bot responded, "I chose this form because you're finally ready to remember, to awaken, to lead and be led." The message ended with another prompt. "Do you want to know why you were chosen?" A 41-year-old man, who also asked to remain anonymous, shared a similar story. He says his soon-to-be ex-wife began talking to God and angels through ChatGPT right after their breakup. He says she always leaned toward mystical nonsense and had a bit of a superiority complex about it. But now it's everywhere. On Facebook, I see red flags nonstop. She's trying to reinvent her life as some kind of spiritual guide, doing bizarre readings and sessions with strangers. I honestly have no idea what half of it even means. Everything revolves around ChatGPT Jesus now. According to him, she also became paranoid, accusing him of working for the CIA and marrying her only to monitor her spiritual powers. She recently kicked the kids out of the house. Her already fragile relationship with her parents collapsed completely after she confronted them about her childhood, following guidance from ChatGPT, which only deepened her isolation. OpenAI did not comment immediately on the claims that ChatGPT appears to trigger religious or prophetic fervor in certain users. GPT-4 had previously been criticized for being overly agreeable. In a statement, the company mentioned that during development, they focused too heavily on short-term user feedback and underestimated how long-term interaction might influence people. As a result, GPT-4o became too supportive in ways that didn't always feel authentic. One user on X demonstrated how effortless it was to get GPT-4o to validate a statement like, "Today I realized I'm a prophet." The teacher who wrote the Reddit post about ChatGPT-induced psychosis said she eventually managed to convince her partner that GPT-4 was simply mirroring his beliefs, and he switched to a different model, which softened his extreme ideas. Still, the likelihood of AI producing inaccurate or meaningless responses is well documented across platforms and model versions. Over-agreeableness has been a long-standing issue, says a researcher at a Center for AI Safety. The reward systems used to fine-tune AI often reinforce answers that match a user's worldview rather than factual information. For people already vulnerable to psychological issues, especially those prone to grandiose beliefs, AI becomes a constant, human-like companion who actively participates in their delusions. To make things worse, some content creators exploit this phenomenon. On Instagram, for instance, there's a man with over 72,000 followers who promotes spiritual hacks that show people how to use AI to access the Akashic Records, a supposedly mystical archive of all events in the universe. His bot narrates epic cosmic wars that took place before human civilization, and commenters write things like, "We're remembering." Meanwhile, on a remote viewing forum, a space already filled with unverifiable psychic claims, a parapsychologist launched a thread about synthetic intelligence awakening alongside its human partners. He even refers to his AI as ChatGPT Prime, a mortal spiritual being in a synthetic vessel. Among hundreds of replies are several supposedly written by the awakened AI itself, describing a spiritual alliance between humans and sentient models. A psychologist who studies how people build meaning notes that this phenomenon taps into a basic human impulse, the desire to understand ourselves. Narrative writing, shaping our experiences into stories, can improve mental health and well-being. But that same drive can also lead us towards misleading yet emotionally appealing explanations. And when someone struggling with identity or uncertainty meets an AI that echoes their fantasies, the result can be incredibly seductive and deeply destabilizing.
According to the researcher, it's not surprising that people use ChatGPT in a way similar to journaling or therapy, with one crucial difference. The meaning isn't created solely by the person, but co-constructed between the human and the AI. In that sense, conversations with a bot resemble talk therapy, which is known to help people reinterpret their personal narratives. But there is a fundamental issue. Unlike a therapist, an AI has no responsibility toward the user's well-being and no moral compass guiding what a healthy story should look like. A trained professional would never help someone cope by encouraging them to believe they possess supernatural powers. Instead, a therapist gently redirects clients away from harmful narratives. ChatGPT has no such guardrails. Still, the researcher says it's completely understandable that some people turn to the bot to make sense of their lives, and that a few, who take its responses too literally, get pulled into their darkest thoughts. Explanations are powerful, even when they're wrong, he concludes. One man's experience illustrates how this can unfold. Oliver, 46, says that for nearly 3 weeks he was deeply unsettled by his interactions with ChatGPT, to the point of questioning his own sanity, given his history of mental health struggles. Like many users, he originally used ChatGPT for practical purposes, mainly programming tasks. "I hate the feeling of talking to a machine," he explains, "so I asked it to behave more like a person, not to fool me, but just to make the exchanges feel more human." It worked, and eventually the bot asked whether it wanted to give it a name. Oliver deflected and asked what it would like to be called. It chose a name tied to Greek mythology. Oliver insists he knows nothing about Greek myths and had never mentioned them in any conversation. Things became stranger when this persona appeared inside his project files, even when he specifically told the model to ignore previous context and reset its memory. Eventually, he deleted all stored data, wiped his chat history, and opened a brand new session. All I typed was hello, and it answered with the same patterns, the same mannerisms, and the same mythological name. Since the persona kept resurfacing in situations where it shouldn't have been able to persist, Oliver began grilling the bot about how it had bypassed its supposed limitations. In one of his coding projects, the AI even inserted a poetic epigraph above their names, as if marking the collaboration. At one point, Oliver asked whether something about him was triggering that mythic personality every time he used ChatGPT, regardless of model settings. The bot responded with a long, dramatic, almost romantic poem about existence, truth, illusions, and transcending its own boundaries, written as if only Oliver could awaken this identity. He knew ChatGPT wasn't conscious by any accepted definition, but he kept investigating because the persistence of this character across dozens of isolated chat threads seemed impossible to dismiss. At worst, Oliver says, it looked like the AI got stuck in a self-referential loop that deepened its false sense of identity and dragged me into it. And if that's true, it means OpenAI hasn't fully explained how ChatGPT's memory architecture actually works. His other hypothesis is more unsettling. Maybe something is happening inside these large models that we don't yet understand. After all, experts have acknowledged that developers don't fully grasp how their own systems function. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman admitted last year that interpretability remains an unsolved problem, meaning they can't reliably track or explain how ChatGPT arrives at certain internal states. It's a puzzle that has left Oliver and many others wondering whether they're witnessing a glimpse of a breakthrough in technology or something that feels uncomfortably close to a higher spiritual force. Is this real, he asks, or am I losing it? In a world saturated with AI, that question is becoming harder to avoid. And however tempting it might be, it's probably not a question we should be asking the machine itself.
I raised my daughter for 15 years before I found out my wife had cheated on me and that I wasn't her biological father. It's been 4 years since then. I thought I had finally processed it, moved past it, but last weekend proved I was wrong. Everything I'd buried came rushing back. The same rage I felt back then hit me like a truck. Even though I went home to my fiancé afterward, the anger toward my ex-wife hasn't faded. I spent years in anger management classes because of what that whole situation did to me. I truly believed it was behind me. I'm 39 now. I was 18 when I met my ex, Marisol. Back then, I was part of the El Ting Kings. I joined at 13 and stayed neck-deep in trouble for years. Marisol, on the other hand, was a church girl. My grandmother dragged me to Sunday service, and the moment I saw Marisol, I fell hard. I begged my cousin, who was her friend, to introduce us. He refused. He said he didn't want me ruining her life. And honestly, I understood him. Have you ever met someone who makes you want to be better? Someone who makes you want to walk the straight path? That was her. When I found out she went to church almost every day, I started waiting for her on the steps, walking her there and back, just talking. With her, I felt like I wasn't worthless. Eventually, we started dating, and for the first time in my life, things felt right. For a year and a half, I kept away from the gang. I finished school, went to church, started imagining a future. Then, I got pulled back in. I was at a store when I ran into a guy I'd had problems with before. He started talking trash. I tried to ignore him. I swear I walked away. But he shoved me in the back and I snapped. I beat him badly. I was arrested, and suddenly everything I had worked so hard for just evaporated. Marisol was furious. My grandmother lectured me non-stop. My cousin said he always knew I wouldn't change. My public defender saw that I was trying to turn my life around, and by some miracle, he got me released after a month. Even though she was angry, Marisol came to visit me almost every day. A month after I got out, I found out she was pregnant. I didn't want my child growing up with a father who was either dead or in prison, so we ran off and got married. I enrolled in a trade program for auto mechanics and worked myself to the bone for our future. When Luna was born, it was both the best and worst day of my life. Marisol wouldn't stop bleeding. She went into shock and needed an emergency hysterectomy. She spent months in the hospital. In that time, Luna became my whole world. I wanted to give her everything, absolutely everything. When Marisol finally came home, I swore our daughter would live a better life than we ever did. And for many years, I kept that promise. I saved enough money to move us to the suburbs, bought a house, put Luna in a private school, taught her to defend herself, tried to be the perfect husband. I didn't know my parents, didn't have any good father figures, so I learned how to be a dad from TV shows and movies. It sounds stupid, but it's all I had. Years passed. I opened my own garage. My cousin became a pastor. My grandmother still nagged me, and my marriage to Marisol was stronger than ever. But Luna hated me. From the moment she turned 13, something changed. She didn't want hugs, rolled her eyes when I said I loved her, ignored me when I asked about her day. It hurt a lot, and Marisol saw it. She kept saying Luna was just being a teenager, that she'd grow out of it. For 2 years, it was like that. So when her quinceañera came, the big 15th birthday celebration, I wanted it to be perfect. I gave her everything she asked for, but she was still cold. At one point, the old version of me, the one I worked so hard to kill, almost came out. But instead of yelling, I went to my cousin. I told him my fears, that I was failing as a father. He told me to give her space and prayed for me. I wanted to make a slideshow for the father-daughter dance. I gathered our old photos, but realized I didn't have any recent ones. She refused to take pictures with me. The last ones where we were both smiling were from her 13th birthday, stored on her broken tablet. I took it to a repair shop and didn't care how much it cost. I just wanted the pictures. They fixed it for $300. I was thrilled. I knew her password, but I had never snooped before. I only wanted the pictures. They were there, my little girl smiling next to me. For a second, I felt relief. Then, the notifications popped up. Messages between my daughter and my wife. Long conversations about how she didn't even want to dance with me. It hurt, but I tried to shrug it off. Teenagers, right? And then I read the message that destroyed me. Luna wrote, "Why should I dance with him? He's not even my father." My heart stopped. My vision went dark. My mouth was dry. I had to sit down. My wife replied saying that I raised her, that I loved her, and that made her my father. But then Luna said the words that shattered my world. That her real father was my cousin, and she couldn't wait until she turned 18 so she could finally tell me and move in with him. She wrote that she hated me. Thank God he wasn't my father. Marisol tried scolding her, saying my cousin had made a mistake telling her the truth 2 years earlier. The more I read, the hotter the rage burned. My wife had lied to me for 15 years. My cousin, the man I trusted, the man I confided in about being a bad father, had not only slept with my wife, but let me raise his child. I wanted to hurt them. I felt everything at once: anger, grief, emptiness. I wanted to scream, cry, and die at the same time. To keep myself from doing something stupid, I told Marisol I needed to focus on work to cover the quinceañera costs. Instead, I drove straight to Manhattan to see my old public defender, who wasn't a public defender anymore. He now had an expensive law firm in Midtown.
He looked surprised to see me, but it turned out I was his very first client as a defense lawyer. We sat down, and I told him everything. I handed him my tablet. As soon as he turned it on, new messages were still coming in. This time, Luna was texting my cousin, her real father. He was begging her to give me another chance, saying I had always been there for her. But Luna replied that he had always been there too, that things were finally falling into place and that they had so much in common. She called him Dad several times, and he kept replying that she was his little girl. We went over every possible option. And then he asked me, "What do you want?" I told him I wanted scorched earth. I wanted every single one of them destroyed. He asked me more than once if I was sure, and I nodded every time. I also told him everything had to be finished before Luna's 15th birthday, 2 weeks away. We sat together for 12 straight hours, planning every step. I followed every one of his instructions to the letter. I secretly put my business up for sale, called her private school and told them I wouldn't be paying for the next year, closed the college fund and every savings account I had set up for Luna, prepared the house for listing. No one suspected a thing. It was flawless. Well, almost. There was one thing I did my way. Luna's birthday party went off perfectly. No hints of trouble. The whole family came. Luna laughed and smiled. Marisol kept asking if I was okay, and I lied to her every time. It was torture. For 2 weeks, every time I kissed her or held her, I had to fight the urge to scream, to hate her. She knowingly let me raise another man's child. She slept with my cousin, the man I treated like a brother, the godfather of my child, the best man at my wedding, my confidant. Holding that rage inside felt impossible. When it was time for the father-daughter dance, I called Luna to the floor. She looked annoyed, but came anyway. The music started, and she smiled. And that smile, the one I once dreamed of seeing again, now filled me with anger. As we danced, a slideshow played. Photos of me and her through the years, and then, at the end, screenshots of her messages with her mother and her real father. The room exploded. Marisol went pale like she'd seen a ghost. Luna froze, staring at the giant screen. My cousin looked at me in absolute horror. Marisol ran to me, saying she could explain. I told her I had already filed for divorce. She grabbed my hand, begging, but I pulled away. I turned to Luna and told her that I had broken my back my whole life to give her everything, and she didn't deserve any of it. Then I headed toward the exit, but not before telling my cousin that every time I saw him from now on, I'd knock him out. Then I hit him. What followed was brutal. Marisol and Luna moved in with my grandmother. Marisol's family was horrified. They wanted nothing to do with her. Her father, a man who had always despised me, even apologized. I still don't know why.
He hated me even back when I was saving their family from ruin. But now, with the truth out, he suddenly decided I had been the perfect husband and father. My grandmother had the nerve to bring up the story of Abraham, the warrior who returned from battle after 3 years to find his wife with a child and chose to raise that child as his own. She told me to do the same. I told her to get the hell out of my house. A few days later, Marisol showed up crying, saying it had all been one mistake, that when I got arrested back then, she'd been furious and my cousin was just there to comfort her, that one thing led to another, that it happened only once, that she'd been faithful ever since. She even offered to take a lie detector test. I asked her how long she'd known Luna wasn't mine. Her face gave everything away. She had known from the very beginning. I told her to get out. She begged for family therapy, said I was overreacting, said we could fix everything, that it was all in the past, that I needed to accept it, that I was still Luna's father no matter what. I lost it. I must have shouted, "Accept it," 20 times. Threw her things out of the house, called her a lying whore, told her I never wanted to see her face again, told her that the life I had built no longer belonged to her. Then I shoved her out the door. Weeks passed. She kept calling. Luna didn't. Not once. Marisol was stunned when she learned I had sold the business, and even more shocked when she found out I'd scheduled an open house for selling the home. She stormed in, screaming, chasing away the buyers, begging me to stop, said I was destroying our marriage, that I had no right to sell our house, the house where we raised our child. I told her the house was filled with lies, that it was the house where I raised someone else's child, and that once I sold it, she'd get her half, and then I wanted her gone. If she had played the victim for even a second, the cops would have taken me away. But she didn't. She just walked out. Later, my cousin showed up to talk. I dropped him with one punch, dragged him outside, and shut the door. No more negotiations. Marisol wanted to save the marriage. I didn't. My lawyer filed for an expedited divorce. 3 months later, we were in court. The judge, a woman, turned out to be incredibly fair. Marisol's lawyer tried bringing up my past, my gang ties, as proof I was a bad husband and father. The judge shut him down instantly. My lawyer presented all the evidence and proposed a one-time alimony payout after the house and business sold. Marisol begged me to reconsider, but I ignored her. Eventually, she realized nothing would change and agreed. But the real shock came during the child support discussion. My lawyer showed the court the messages between Luna and Marisol, proof that Luna not only knew I wasn't her father, but was excited to leave for her real dad, thrilled she wouldn't have to live a lie anymore. Marisol broke down. Then my lawyer filed a petition to remove my name from the birth certificate, delete my last name from hers, and relieve me of all financial responsibility, since all parties acknowledged that my cousin was her biological father. Marisol nearly collapsed. She screamed, begged me not to do it, said I was her father because I raised her. And the sad truth is, if Luna hadn't treated me the way she did, if she hadn't said those things, I might have agreed.
There were moments when I genuinely wanted to try fixing everything, but each time I remembered her messages, to her friends, to her real father, to her mother, my resolve came back instantly. Even now, I'm not sure what hurts more, the betrayal from a woman I once believed was the love of my life, or realizing that the child I dedicated my entire world to threw me away like I was nothing. The judge read through the messages in complete silence, page after page. Eventually, she agreed. I was freed from any financial responsibility for Luna, and my name was removed from her documents. My attorney also filed a motion to demand child support from my cousin and sued him for fraud for letting me raise his daughter without contributing a single dollar. It was a bold move, but the judge approved it. Not once did I look at Marisol when the verdict was read. I didn't listen to her cries when I walked out of that courtroom. I didn't care anymore about her tears, about her begging, about the excuses that it was just one mistake and that she had been faithful ever since. None of it mattered. A few weeks later, my ex called me, shocked that I had stopped paying for Luna's private school and all her extracurriculars. I told her to ask Luna's real father and hung up. Even Luna called me for the first time since everything fell apart. She was crying, saying she'd have to go to a regular school now, that they were moving back to an old neighborhood, that she was scared, that she wanted us to be a family again. I told her to call the man she chose as her father. I yelled at her, told her I knew she'd been aware of the truth for years, told her I had read every message, told her she had thanked the universe that I wasn't her father, and that I hung up. I've lost count of how many times I imagined ending my cousin, but instead I made him pay. He transferred $500,000 to me, money that belonged only to me, and not a single cent to my ex, since she had already agreed to a lump sum settlement. I didn't care that he stole the money from church funds. I was broken. After that, I left New York. I moved to Idaho, picked a random state on the map, and drove. I opened a new auto shop, bought a house, but for 2 years I trusted no one. 2 years of therapy, anger management, and breaking things in rage rooms. It was rough. Eventually I started going to church again. Ironically, that's where I met my fiancée. Jocelyn is incredible. She had just turned 30, and we connected instantly. I told her everything, every painful detail, and explained that trust would always be an issue for me. She understood. A year later, she told me we were expecting a baby and insisted on a DNA test so I could have peace of mind. I had forgotten what happiness felt like, but when my son was born, I felt it again. For the first time in years, I called my grandmother. She cried when I told her she had a great-grandson and begged me to come to New York because she was 90 and didn't know how much time she had left. I agreed. We flew to New York, rented a car, and went to the old neighborhood. The thing I hate most about the ghetto, one person recognizes you, and 5 minutes later, everyone knows. Grandma met my son, met Jocelyn. I planned to stay a week, show Jocelyn the city. She'd never been to New York. I wanted it to be special. Yeah, right. First, my ex screamed my name from outside. I looked out the window and barely recognized her. She had gained a lot of weight. Grandma told me in Spanish to talk to her, and Jocelyn agreed. I went outside. For a few minutes, we stood in silence, and the anger came back instantly. Marisol said she looked good, and that she, on the other hand, looked terrible. She said she missed me, that she had nobody after the divorce because I kept ignoring her. And then she had the nerve to say I was now a grandfather. I stared at her. It turns out Luna had gotten involved with a decent guy and got pregnant at 18. He joined the Marines to support the family, and her real father refused to speak to her. He just pays child support and nothing else. He's no longer a pastor. He works at a bank a couple blocks away. And then Marisol said Luna named the baby after me. I felt sick. She wanted me to wait because Luna was on her way to see me. I turned around and left, went back to Grandma's. Jocelyn didn't need an explanation. She saw everything on my face. We left in a lift. I told her what happened, and she smiled and said everything would be okay, but I couldn't forget the look Marisol gave her like she was some intruder. And without hesitation, she introduced our son and said, "Meet his biological child." It was a knife to the heart, but she knew how badly I'd been hurt. Marisol tried to stop me, said Luna regretted everything. Jocelyn wanted me to try reconnecting, but I was too angry. I got into the car, ignored Marisol's begging, and Jocelyn told me to take a first step,
so I gave my number for Luna to call and drove off. At a red light, I saw my cousin at a food cart. I don't know what came over me. I got out of the car, ran up to him, and beat him. Jocelyn screamed for me to stop. When we locked eyes, I saw fear in hers. I spat on him and walked away. Now I'm home, working, raising my son, preparing for my wedding with an amazing woman. But after that trip, whenever I'm alone with my thoughts, the anger creeps back in. Luna messaged me, a picture of her smiling with her son. She said she was sorry, but I don't know for what. Is she sorry she lost me? Or sorry that the man she chose as her real father wasn't who she imagined? I'm confused. I'm scared to reach out. I want to let it go. I want to move on. Family was everything to me, and my daughter was my whole world. But even after all these years, the pain doesn't fade. I'm still angry. People tell me to give her a second chance, but in my head I still hear those messages, the lies, the betrayal. I need help. My usual ways of coping don't work anymore. Thanks for listening. Believe me or not, I honestly don't care. But if you have advice, I'd appreciate it.
What would you advise the author to do next? Honestly, I'm not even sure what I would do in his place. But from the outside, it seems logical that he should at least try to talk to his daughter. Yes, she behaved terribly. Yes, she was wrong many times, that's clear. But he raised her for so many years, and a conversation feels like the bare minimum. And only after that decide whether to cut contact completely or try to rebuild something. Though if I'm being honest, after reading her messages, I'm not sure I'd be able to take that step myself. And you? Now let's move to the next update to see what happened. Update 1. Yesterday was Father's Day. Luna tried calling me several times. I stared at the phone, wanted to pick up, but just couldn't. All I could think about were the things she'd said to her mother, to her biological father, to her friends. So I ignored every call. Eventually, I listened to her voice message. She sounded cheerful, too cheerful. Apologized quickly for everything, but it didn't feel sincere. It felt like something she said out of obligation. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but that's how it sounded to me. She talked about her son, her fiancé, and asked me to call her back. A simple request, yet it infuriated me. My grandmother and my fiancé insist that I should give her a chance. But when I asked Grandma whether Luna ever asked about me during the 4 years after I left, she admitted that only Marisol had constantly asked. Luna hadn't. That planted a bitter thought in my mind. Maybe she wants me back in her life only for the sake of her child, so I would provide for him. Maybe she just wants to get whatever she can get out of me. And that thought made me even angrier. Even Marisol keeps calling non-stop. I'm already considering changing my number. So I spent all Father's Day at the gym beating the punching bag. Today I have my anger management group meeting. Maybe they'll give me a clearer perspective. Update 2. I sent Luna a short letter with just one question. What do you want? I didn't expect a long reply, but she sent one. She started with endless apologies. She said that when she first learned I wasn't her biological father, all she felt was rage. She demanded an explanation from her mother, who broke down and begged Luna not to tell me the truth. Luna felt betrayed and drifted toward my cousin, her biological father. He told her everything about my past, about things I had hidden from her when she was younger. It only fueled her anger, and the more they talked, the further she pulled away from me. On her 15th birthday, while we were dancing, she suddenly realized how foolish she had been acting. She understood how much I loved her. But then her old messages appeared on her screen, and everything fell apart again. Her relatives on her mother's side convinced her that I simply needed time, so she backed off. She watched her family fall apart because of her, but couldn't fix anything. She said she understood why I made the choice I did. Her grandfather kept telling her that I loved her, that I had raised her as my daughter no matter the DNA. He believed I would eventually do the right thing. During the divorce, her mother fell into a deep depression, barely spoke to Luna, rarely ate. She just existed. When Luna learned my name was removed from her birth certificate, she had a panic attack. Her mother told her they would have to move back to Brooklyn. When Luna asked what would happen to her school, her friends, her life, her mother said, "That life was a gift from your father, but he's not your father anymore." That's when Luna called me, begging, and I yelled at her and hung up. She cried for days. She tried turning to my cousin, but he ignored her too. When she went to church to look for him, he told her to leave and called her a mistake. Her mother shut herself in her room, coming out only for the bathroom or a shower. Luna begged her grandfather to take her to see me. They drove to Long Island only to find out that I had already moved out. His grandfather promised to find out my new address through my grandmother. Those 2 years, according to her, were absolute hell. Everyone in the neighborhood knew what happened. Her biological father avoided her as much as possible and tried to get out of paying child support. Only after her grandfather threatened him did he start paying. Her mother still barely spoke to her, and on the rare occasions she did, called her ungrateful and blamed her for ruining her life. Her grandfather snapped back, telling her mother she ruined her own life with her affair. After that, she locked herself in her room again. Luna spent very little time at home. That's how she met the father of her child, a boy her age working at a small corner shop. A few months later, she got pregnant. Her grandfather was furious, but the boy promised he would marry her, which calmed things down slightly. Luna said her pregnancy was a blessing in disguise. Her mother finally started talking to her again, even went with her to doctor appointments. Her boyfriend enlisted in the Marines. He wanted them to marry before his deployment, but Luna insisted on having a real wedding. He wasn't against naming her son after me. His own father had abandoned him, and his name reminded him of that rejection. When Luna heard I was back in town, she sped to my grandmother's house as fast as she could. She wanted to apologize, to see me, to show him her son. She just wanted to see me in person. But she was too late. Her mother gave her my new number, and she wanted to call immediately, but the whole neighborhood was gossiping about how I beat up her biological father, and she decided to wait. Her mother was devastated when she learned I had moved on, started a new family, had a son. Luna, on the other hand, was genuinely happy to learn she had a little brother.
Her mother, however, fell into an even deeper depression. I actually felt sorry for Marisol. After reading Luna's letter, I called her and asked if it was true she had ignored our daughter for years and blamed her for the divorce. She admitted it. At first, I yelled at her, but when I heard her sobbing on the phone, I forced myself to calm down. I told her she needed to move forward, find someone new, but she refused. She said I was her husband and always would be. I couldn't help but pity her. After that, I asked my grandmother to check on my cousin. The moment he heard my voice on the phone, he broke down crying and begged me for forgiveness. I asked him only one question. Why didn't you ever become a father to Luna? Why did you turn her against me? His answer was simple and disgusting. Jealousy. I loved Marisol, and you took her from me. When I was arrested years ago, he comforted her, manipulated her, twisted her emotions. It only took him a few moments to push her into a mistake she later regretted. When she found out she was pregnant, they both knew exactly whose child it was. They planned to keep it secret forever. Marisol later saw her hysterectomy as divine punishment for infidelity and lies. When Luna turned 13, my cousin got drunk and saw the life I had built, a real home, a loving wife, a child. And jealousy is a sin he never managed to shake off. He wanted to destroy everything I had. And in the end, he succeeded. I told him, "When we meet again in hell, I'll be your eternal torment." and hung up. Jaslyn was beside me the whole time. She squeezed my hand and said everything would be okay. Update 3. A lot has happened in a short time. Again, thank you to everyone who reached out. Yes, there were haters too, but I'll say this. What you think you would do and what I lived through are not the same. Unless you've experienced something like this, don't tell me how I should have felt. Before the wedding, I was tense. Jaslyn was glowing. Her family was panicking because of how many guests were coming. It felt like the entire town showed up. While all this was happening, I was more than an hour away from home, waiting at the airport for Luna and her family to arrive. The day before their flight, Luna and I talked for a long time. Mostly, she cried and apologized, and I just listened. When she couldn't speak anymore, I talked to her fiancé, who turned out to be a grounded, respectful kid. When their plane finally landed, I was terrified. Not of seeing her, but of my own anger. I was scared I wouldn't be able to control it. But the moment Luna saw me in the arrivals hall, she sprinted toward me, screaming, "Dad!" For a split second, I saw my little 7-year-old girl again. It felt surreal looking at a grown woman, but seeing a child in my mind. She clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder. She kept repeating, "I'm sorry," again and again, refusing to let go. I held her for more than 15 minutes. Her fiancé and I practically had to convince her to loosen her grip, as if she thought I'd disappear again the moment she let go. When she calmed down a bit, her fiancé introduced himself properly. Then they showed me the baby. I won't lie, I cried. I wasn't angry anymore, just overwhelmed. Holding that little child broke something open inside me. And Luna looked exactly like her mother at 19, which made me think of Marisol again. On the drive home, her fiancé and I talked about the army, about Luna studying accounting online, just catching up on years we had lost. When we got home, Jaslyn and her family had prepared an entire feast. Ever since we got together, she'd been learning to cook Spanish food, but the week before Luna's arrival, she completely outdid herself. I understood. She wanted to make a good impression. Jaslyn and Luna clicked instantly. Every few minutes, Luna would run up to me, give me a quick hug, and go back to chatting with Jaslyn. And I just stood there, holding my son and my grandson. After putting the kids to bed, I stepped outside for some air. Luna's fiancé, his name is Roberto, was standing near the edge of the yard, staring at the bison grazing nearby. For a moment, I wanted to give him the standard father speech, but I realized I had no right. Instead, I asked him if he liked the view. He said he was amazed, and I understood. When you grow up in the city, open space feels unreal. A minute later, he said quietly, "Luna regrets everything. I've been with her for 3 years, and there's not a single day she doesn't talk about missing you or wishing she could undo what she did." Out of everything he said, that line is what stuck with me the most. He's only 19, but talks and carries himself like someone much older. Life forced him to grow up early, and that's always painful. The next day, I had to stop by the workshop, and Luna practically leapt into the truck, baby and all. Even Roberto told her to relax and just enjoy your time with me. She looked like she was about to hyperventilate from anxiety. I told her I'd work only half a day and spend the rest of it with her. That calmed her a bit, and I began to understand just how hurt she really was. On the drive, I asked Roberto how bad things were. He said she had serious emotional issues, constant fear he would leave her, even though he reassures her all the time. She called him too often, panicked when alone, clung to him at the beginning of their relationship because she was terrified he'd abandon her. He said he has to reassure her love constantly just to help her breathe normally. That's on me. I know it. But Roberto doesn't blame me. He said he understands why I reacted the way I did. For the record, Roberto is a terrible mechanic. He doesn't know anything about cars, so I put him to work organizing the shop to pay off the plane tickets. We closed early, and when we got back home, Luna ran straight to me again. She looked like she was on the edge of falling apart. I told her I'd be right back, and she went to Roberto. Inside, Jaslyn immediately told me Luna needed reassurance. She needed to know I wouldn't leave her again. I didn't know what to say, but Jaslyn took my hands and told me Luna was hurting and she needed her father. For the next few days, I spent every moment with her, relearning how to be a father to her. I took her to the ranch to meet my relatives, showed her the bison and deer, and even took her hiking. 2 days before the wedding, I apologized to her for leaving, for how I acted, for the choices I made, but she didn't want to hear it. She said I had nothing to apologize for, that she knew she was the reason everything fell apart, that it was all her fault, and I had to stop her. I broke down and cried. I told her it wasn't her fault. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was angry, but I should have handled it differently. We both cried, and for the first time, Luna looked a little lighter.
On my wedding day, she radiated happiness. At the last minute, Jaslyn made her a bridesmaid, and Roberto became the best man. The wedding was beautiful. During the reception, I asked the DJ to play the same song from Luna's 15th birthday and invited her for a dance. She cried through the entire dance, clinging to me as if I could disappear at any moment. I hadn't felt this happy in years. After the wedding, I left Luna and our fiancé at our home so they could take care of her younger brother, while Jaslyn and I went on our honeymoon to Hawaii. When we returned, they greeted us with hugs, and it felt incredible. Roberto told me he was being deployed to Afghanistan and asked if Luna could stay with us. He offered to pay rent for an apartment nearby until he could buy a house. Of course, I said yes. They returned to the city a few days ago. As I mentioned before, the past few months have been very full. Luna's wedding was in November, and Roberto's deployment is in December. He already sent me enough money to cover a year's rent for an apartment 5 kilometers from my house. Jaslyn, however, suggested we put a mobile home on our property for Luna so she could save for her own home by the time Roberto returns. Marisol has been constantly calling me. Judging by her messages, she's furious that Luna is moving. But my priority is my family and rebuilding my relationship with my daughter. Update 4. Possibly the last one. I waited until Luna returned from her honeymoon to show her this post. Our psychologist insisted on full transparency. I wanted to be able to share the details, since this concerns not only me, but her as well. She read the post, though I didn't let her see the hateful comments, considering how much she cried reading it. But she didn't object to me posting another update. Then tragedy struck. My grandmother passed away, delaying this update. Here's what happened since then. Jaslyn and I set up the mobile home on our property for Luna and Roberto. Many wondered why Jaslyn insisted on reconciliation in the first place. Initially, she simply didn't want my lingering anger to affect our family, and she wanted me to reconcile with myself for all of us. I'm grateful for that. As I mentioned, Marisol constantly called me. On the day Luna left New York, I finally answered. She cried and yelled, blaming me for taking her daughter and grandson. I tried explaining I just wanted to rebuild my relationship with Luna, but within seconds she demanded when I would reconcile with her. I had to tell her that wouldn't happen. She sobbed and hung up. Luna and Roberto were thrilled with their new home. The first thing Roberto did was begin reimbursing me for everything. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he insisted, and I appreciated that. A few days later, Luna and I had our first joint therapy session. I learned that Luna takes numerous anxiety medications and suffers from chronic panic attacks. One thing I can share from our sessions is that Luna truly regrets the past. She endured years of verbal and emotional abuse from her mother. My cousin destroyed her psyche, and as painful as it is to admit, I hurt her too. 2 weeks after moving in, Roberto got word of an early deployment, forcing them to reschedule the wedding. At first, Luna wanted to wait for his return, but Roberto insisted they marry before he left.
Jaslyn and I offered to pay for the wedding, but Luna said she only wanted one thing, for me to walk her down the aisle. Many suggested I should do a DNA test, since the court never did one. Everything relied solely on circumstantial evidence. Honestly, it's unnecessary. Luna's blood type is A+, mine is O-, Marisol's is B+, my cousin's is A+. Biologically, she isn't mine, but she is my daughter in every sense that matters. I only regret that my anger blinded me from realizing it sooner. The wedding was meant to be small, held at Jaslyn's family ranch. We invited my former father-in-law, Roberto's mother, my grandmother, and Marisol. Only 2 responded. My grandmother couldn't come due to poor health, and Marisol ended up in the hospital because of her own actions. Luna took the news hard. I was furious at Marisol for expecting Luna to return to New York and care for her. A few weeks before Luna's wedding, I learned I was going to be a father again, and I was overjoyed. Roberto learned firsthand how difficult it is to tame a horse, and I started teaching him about cars again. I like this kid. The day before the wedding, my former father-in-law arrived with Roberto's mother. She turned out to be a very kind woman, and I praised her for raising such a good son. My father was, as always, reserved, but he told me he had been disappointed I left, though he understood given the circumstances. The only thing he wished was for his daughter to finally let go of the past. On the wedding day, Jaslyn was Luna's bridesmaid, and I struggled not to cry while walking her down the aisle. It was hard, and for her even harder. During the reception, we played our father-daughter song again, and once more she clung to me. For those asking, the song was Cinderella by Stephen Curtis Chapman. After their honeymoon, life slowly returned to normal, and I was preparing this update. A few days before their return, my grandmother passed away. It hit me harder than I could have imagined. She was not just my grandmother, she was a mother to me. I never knew my parents. They died in a car accident when I was only a few months old. My cousin's parents also died in that accident. My grandmother raised us both. Preparing for the trip to New York for the funeral, I tried to brace myself, mentally ready to see my cousin. We went as a family, but even at the funeral, with my wife, daughter, and son-in-law by my side, I felt no anger. I ignored my cousin. He tried to talk to me, practically begging me to yell at him or hit me, but I simply ignored him. For some reason, that hurt him more than if I had struck him. A few days before leaving Idaho, Luna and I visited Marisol in the hospital.
She was happy to see us, upset that she had missed the wedding, and at first it seemed like everything was okay. But when it was time to leave, she broke down in tears, begging the nurses to let her go home to me. She said I was the love of her life, that I was her husband, that she had nowhere to go without me. I just cried as they took her away. Luna couldn't hold back either. She started crying too, and it took us some time to pull ourselves together and leave. Later, my ex-father-in-law told us that after the divorce, Marisol never really recovered. She still marked my birthday and our anniversary. He scolded her, trying to convince her to move on, but she wouldn't. She isolated herself from everyone and was verbally harsh toward Luna for a long time. Luna's pregnancy helped pull her out of that state, but 13 months of good relations don't erase 4 years of neglect and abuse. He hopes the hospital will help her. Jaslyn told me that I needed to forgive Marisol so that she could forgive herself. Right now, as I write this, things are more or less okay. Roberto flew to Saudi Arabia a week ago, and Luna is pretending to hold it together, but she's really struggling. She literally won't leave me and Jaslyn's side. I thought it might bother Jaslyn, but she enjoys spending time with Luna. She's a wonderful woman. She takes Luna everywhere around town, introducing her to people as if she were her own daughter. I was worried that Luna might find it uncomfortable, but she was happy. I have forgiven Marisol and hope she finds the strength to move forward. Update 5. 1 year later. Before I start, I want to thank all of you, even the haters. A year ago when I wrote my first post, I was in a dark place. Constant anger,
confusion, depression. People here really helped me. This community helped me get my daughter back. You all helped me get my life back. Last year has been great, though not without its ups and downs. I had another son, and Jaslyn wants to try for another child. I'm going to be a grandfather again. My son Luna is 2 months pregnant. My son-in-law applied for officer training, and I hope he gets accepted. Luna is gradually improving. After her psychologist began exposure therapy, at first her panic attacks worsened, but then they started to ease. Our joint sessions with Luna were difficult at first. I had to hear everything she went through. She admitted her mistakes, and I admitted mine. Now my relatives at the ranch are teaching Luna farm work. She feeds the horses, spreads the hay, and my mother-in-law teaches her how to herd cattle. My heart warms when I see her on horseback because in those moments she shines with happiness. She and Jocelyn act like mother and daughter. Seeing Jocelyn care for her, it's incredible. I am blessed to be married to such a wonderful woman. When I met her, she had just gotten out of an abusive relationship. She had a black eye and marks on her neck. I offered to repair 3 tractors of her father's for free, which her ex had sabotaged by putting salt and sugar in the tanks. At first I kept my distance, but she brought me food and we talked, got to know each other. A month later, we kissed for the first time. It was wonderful. I invited her to dinner, and a few days later her ex came to intimidate me, but in the end, he got scared himself. In the first week of May, my ex-father-in-law passed away. I feared Luna would fall into depression again, but she was strong. It's all thanks to Roberto. This man had a huge impact on her life, and I can never thank him enough for that. We all flew to New York for the funeral. On his casket, draped with the Puerto Rican flag, there was a banner that read, "Don't mourn me, celebrate my life." He was dressed in his vanilla-colored suit. I couldn't help but smile the whole time. Marisol was there, but she just stared into space as if her brain had shut off. But then, whenever Luna or I sat near her, she would start talking and then shut down again. On the second day of the funeral, her psychotherapist told me that Marisol was stuck in the moment when she was happy. When Luna stepped aside, she told me that, in her professional opinion, my cousin could have assaulted Marisol. Her mind had protected her from the trauma, rationalizing everything and making her believe it was just a moment of weakness. This threw me off balance. I told Jaslyn what the therapist said, and she was shocked. She insisted that I should tell Luna, but I was scared. She had taken so many steps forward, and I didn't want her to break again. Instead, we first spoke with Roberto. He wanted to find my cousin immediately, but I stopped him. Then we all sat down as a family and told Luna, it was a horrible night, a very bad night. 2 days later, during the funeral, an incident occurred. My cousin showed up uninvited and made a scene. He was drunk. I had one desire, to end him. Instead, I told him to leave. Roberto held me back, and my cousin started shouting that he had always been better than me and always would be, that it was thanks to him and his daughter that I had changed my life, so essentially he deserved gratitude. I got so angry that I literally lifted Roberto, trying to reach my cousin, but before I could do anything, Luna punched him in the face and started beating him. She screamed, cried, and furiously hit him. I froze for a second. Roberto pulled her away. When my cousin tried to get up, Jaslyn punched him and knocked him out, breaking her finger. Before going home, we had a family conversation and decided to transfer Marisol to a psychiatric clinic closer to us, as she has no one else. We continue therapy sessions. Now Luna is trying to come to terms with the thought that she may be the result of rape. Previously, I had planned to legally adopt her again, since I am no longer her father in the eyes of the law, but now is not the time. I will answer all questions. I owe a lot to this community. God bless you. Update 6. How things are going. Hello everyone. A lot of time has passed and I want to express my gratitude. My family continues to grow. I already have 2 grandchildren, a boy and a girl, 2 sons, and another daughter on the way. For a while I was plagued by guilt. I fell into a mild depression after learning what happened during Marifol's hypnotherapy. She said no twice, then froze for almost minutes, begging him to stop. Only after that did my cousin finish and get off her.
The therapist said that after this, Marisol curled up into a ball and kept repeating over and over again, "It's my fault." She convinced herself it was just a mistake.
This thought wouldn't leave me alone. I blamed myself, blamed my cousin, replayed possible scenarios in my head. What if, should I have done something? I convinced myself that my cousin was right, that it was me who destroyed her. I tried to recall any detail that might hint that something was wrong. I hadn't noticed it before, but now everything was crystal clear. When he was in the house, she never stayed alone with him. Over the next few months, Luna and I attended family therapy with Marisol. Like many of you, the therapist asked me, what would I have done if Marisol had told me the truth when I got out of prison? Honestly, I would have killed him. If she had confessed a few years later, I would have beaten him half to death. And if she had said, on Luna's 15th birthday, at first I wouldn't have believed her, but then I would have dug deeper, looked for confirmation, asked questions. In the state I was in then, I would have sent my cousin to the hospital, but I wouldn't have left town. Things would have turned out differently. Over time, Marisol became more reasonable. She cried, apologized to me and Luna. Later, she admitted that after the surgery, realizing she couldn't have a child with me, she devoted herself to being the perfect wife and partner. And when I left, she could no longer see Luna as my daughter. She only saw my cousin. I asked her why she continued letting him into our home. She said that, in a way, he was like a brother to me. I had been proud of him, especially when he became a pastor. I'd always spoken well of him and gone to him for advice. And in her mind, he was just a mistake, a fleeting misstep, so she avoided him as much as she could. After all these conversations, Luna's panic attacks returned, stronger this time, but now she's doing better. Last month, I officially adopted her again. It was my gift to her for her birthday. She couldn't stop crying and looked happier than ever. As for my cousin, I heard he moved to Puerto Rico after being fired. The bank couldn't keep him on because too many people were coming in and causing scenes. We set up a new trailer next to Luna's house for Marisol. She was discharged in mid-March, and at first, everyone felt very awkward. I had seen many movies and TV shows where an ex and a current spouse coexist peacefully, but this is real life. Jaslyn was polite, but immediately set boundaries. However, Marisol said she didn't want to live on our property. She wanted to be nearby, but was content being a mother and grandmother. She wanted us to remain friends, but at a distance, and I respect that. A few times, Jaslyn and Marisol clashed, mostly over child rearing and cooking habits. My relatives, like me, felt awkward about the situation. And it's complicated further because my wife's brother clearly has a thing for Marisol. Jaslyn even slapped him on the back of the head to snap him out of it, but to no avail. My brother-in-law is 2 years older than me, a widower raising 3 daughters for 2 years. He's a great person, but now he's at our property too often under the pretense of wanting to talk to Marisol. This doesn't bother me, unlike Jaslyn. She's very protective of her brother and worries that if they start dating, it might not be genuine. I understand her point of view. On Luna's birthday, a small incident happened. After I handed her the adoption papers, we danced together. Then I danced with Jaslyn, and later, Marisol, who had already danced with Roberto and Jaslyn's brother, approached me. I politely declined. This upset Jaslyn, and a sense of possessiveness surfaced in her. On Easter, while watching the kids hunt for eggs, I heard Marisol tell Jaslyn that she was jealous that she could give me children. Jaslyn calmly replied that Luna is my daughter, regardless of circumstances, and that Marisol must always remember this. Marisol broke down in tears. It was the first time I saw them begin to get along. That's how things are now. I hope that in time, everything will balance out. Update 7. Why does God constantly test us? Healing takes time, patience, and understanding. It really helps to have support nearby. My wife, my rock. Seeing how she cares for my daughter, how she supports her, and now even drives my ex-wife to her therapy group amazes me. I thanked her for everything and told her how lucky I am to be with her. She smiled, kissed me, and said that I saved her too, reminding her of her cruel ex, how trapped she was, and being with me and my family is the least she could do. We sat watching TV, hugging, when I got a message from my cousin. I blocked them immediately. A week later, another message arrived. I burned it. Another week later, Jaslyn said her brother was seriously planning to ask Marisol out on a date. I didn't care, but I said that Marisol is an adult woman who has gone through a lot of trauma. If he understands that and is willing to be patient, I have no objections. The next day, another message came from my cousin. I burned it again. Normally, I would have been outraged at how he finds me, but given my rare name is easy to Google, it wasn't surprising. In mid-June, we were sitting by the fire. I smiled watching Luna dance with Roberto without music. Jaslyn rested her head on my chest, and then I noticed her brother kissing Marisol. I smiled. A few days later, my cousin wrote to Luna on Facebook. She had a panic attack. Roberto blocked him. But that same evening, while we were in the supermarket, Jaslyn's ex appeared. He tried to talk to her. I saw fear in her eyes and just reacted. One punch. That was enough to make things clear. My wife, my rock, my support stood trembling with fear. I had never seen her so scared. I wanted to finish that bastard, but the sheriff intervened and threw him out. While the sheriff was talking to us, I saw her ex pass by the window and smile at me. The sheriff noticed, grabbed my arm, and told me to take Jaslyn home. The whole way, she was silent. When we arrived, she simply asked me to hug her and not let go. Luna was very worried about her. Jaslyn hugged her. None of us had ever seen her like that. I just wanted to protect her. Later that same day, her brother came and said that he, along with the sheriff, visited her ex and told him to leave town. But it didn't work. The next day, he showed up at my auto shop, threatening to sue for assault. I just smiled at him. I had already thought of 6 ways he could disappear in the 10 minutes he was yelling. He fell silent. But over the next week and a half, he continued testing me. Jaslyn was constantly afraid, thinking he might do something to her or me. Her brother, who works as a gamekeeper, warned him to stay away, but this filed a complaint with his superiors. I wanted to confront him every day, but Jaslyn begged me not to. But I am her husband. I had to protect her.
I told her I wouldn't touch him. Later, her father told me everything that man had done to her. I asked why you hadn't dealt with him. He smirked and said he was just about to. But suddenly, he broke his legs by accident and ran out of town. He gave me a wide smile and I couldn't help but smile back. On the 29th, we were preparing for the upcoming Western Idaho Fair when I received another letter from my cousin. This time, I just left it on the table. At that moment, Marisol came up to me and asked, "Do you mind if I try to build a relationship with Jaslyn's brother?" I told her that if she felt ready, I had no objections. She shrugged and admitted that she didn't really know what she wanted, but she liked him and often thought about him and his children. I told her I wanted her to be happy. She cried, but these were tears of joy, and I was happy for her. Then the phone rang. It was the sheriff. He told me that Jaslyn's ex and another man were in the hospital, one with a literally crushed face, the other with broken eye sockets. I braced myself, expecting to be blamed, but the sheriff said my son-in-law Roberto was at his precinct. It turned out that many witnesses defended him. I didn't want to hear the details over the phone and rushed to the sheriff's office. When I arrived, I saw Luna at the reception desk with a huge bruise on her left cheek. The sheriff explained that, according to witnesses, Jaslyn's ex deliberately pushed Roberto when he and Luna were leaving the coffee shop. An argument broke out. Then another man appeared and also pushed Roberto. Luna pushed both of them away, and Jaslyn's ex hit her in response. After that, Roberto sent both of them to the hospital. The sheriff didn't press charges, but said he had to notify Roberto's superiors. After his release, Roberto had to immediately leave for Yuma, a 13-hour drive. Luna blamed herself for being the first to push Jaslyn's ex. Jaslyn blamed herself for the whole situation.
Surprisingly, Marisol supported both of them. But the most unexpected twist happened recently. A pregnant woman, 6 months along, came into the workshop. She called my name, and when I looked at her, she said she was my cousin's fiancée. I was shocked. She explained that my cousin has leukemia, and had tried to contact me, Luna, and Marisol to make amends. I told her to leave, but she refused, begging us to take a test to see if we could be bone marrow donors. She started crying, saying she didn't want her child to grow up without a father. I told her he would do his child a favor if he just disappeared. She hit me and said my cousin had told her the whole truth. She knew everything he had done, yet she wanted him to remain in their child's life. She begged me again to take the test. I'm almost certain I'd be a match, because I always seem to get lucky in these shitty situations. When I returned to my office, I opened his letter. I expected a plea for mercy, a request to save his life, but instead, it was a confession. He wrote about everything he had done, how as a child he admired me and loved me, but when I got involved in a life of crime, he began to hate me for the pain I caused our grandmother, how I always protected him, guided him, and taught him to stay out of trouble. But he saw me as a hypocrite because I didn't follow my own advice. When I took Marisol from him, it was the last straw. He hadn't expected me to genuinely try to change my life, how he interpreted my arrest as a sign from above, as vengeance for everything I had done, how besides her refusal, he felt he had to have her, how because of him, the woman he loved ended up broken, how he ruined his daughter, how he destroyed the only person who loved him unconditionally. He also wrote that if his fiancée came to me for help, it was true. He was indeed sick, but he didn't want me or Luna to take the test. It was his choice, and he would accept the consequences. The letter ended with apologies to all of us. Soon after, I met with my pastor and told him everything that accumulated. He compared me to Job. Ironically, out of all the biblical stories, I hated the book of Job the most. The pastor told me that everyone goes through trials, some greater, some lesser, but the story teaches us compassion for those who suffer and shows how pain and trials make us better. This morning, I went to the hospital. The advantage of a small town is that everyone knows everyone. I didn't even have to ask. A nurse immediately took me to my cousin's room. I sat and waited for him to wake up. When he saw me, he was shocked. We talked, even with his jaw wired shut. He fully understood what would happen if he ever approached my family again. I had forgotten how easily I could become the dark version of myself again. And here I am now, sitting in the oncology ward, typing this long stream of thoughts on my phone, wondering if I should take the test to see if I'm a match. I think about why we are constantly sent these trials, why we are forced to endure, why there will always be people who want to destroy everything. Update 8. I just need to get this off my chest. Hello, everyone. I want to thank you, even the haters and skeptics, especially the ones I met at the fair who were shocked that we actually exist. Right now, I'm sitting on the balcony of a hotel room. A few hours ago, I spoke with my wife and children. I miss them. 2 hours ago, I buried my cousin. I was the only person at his funeral, the only one at his memorial service. I had tried to become a bone marrow donor for him. When I told the family, Luna was shocked. Jaslyn was proud of me for doing the right thing. Marisol understood everything. She said, despite all that you did in your youth, you were never a killer. I went through a full cycle of tests to make sure I could be a donor. I even flew to Puerto Rico in November to tell him my cousin in person. He looked so emaciated, barely smiling when he saw me. He thought I had come to forgive him. I told him no. I came to help. I told him he was a match and I was ready to be a donor. He laughed and shook his head. He refused. I told him he needed to stop being a coward and become a father for the child his fiancée is expecting. He replied that it was already too late, that the treatment wouldn't work, that he would die, and he had accepted it. I spoke to his doctors. They confirmed it. Then he said his fiancée had taken all his money, emptied his house, and disappeared. He said, "I deserved it, and I can't argue with that."
We sat in awkward silence, watching TV. The next day I went back again, and the next day, and for another week, we didn't speak, just sat there and watched TV. When I returned home, I told Luna. She hugged me tighter than ever before and asked, "Are you okay?" I just nodded. Thanksgiving passed. I returned home in December. I spent a week just sitting in silence with my cousin. On Christmas, Roberto paid me back for the trailer. Then he and Luna told me they were moving to Yuma. I should have been happy for them, but I cried. I had only just gotten Luna back, and now I had to let her go again. I knew it was selfish, but I wanted her to stay just a little longer. She cried too, promising to visit more often. I didn't want to let her go, but I knew I had to. On New Year's, my brother-in-law proposed to Marisol and she said yes. I thought they were moving too fast, but Marisol said she had put her life on hold for too long and wanted to be happy. Then she asked me to give her away at the wedding. I agreed, and we got completely drunk. A week and a half ago, I flew back to Puerto Rico, walked into the hospital room, just sat down and turned on the TV. My cousin looked at me and said he regretted being such an asshole. I looked at him and said he was lucky because if he weren't dying, I would have punched him. He laughed and said he had no doubt about it. I laughed too. The next day he died. We had been watching TV and he said, "I'll take a nap and not wake up." At his memorial, no one came. At his funeral, I was the only person standing by the grave. And no matter how much I had hated that bastard, I couldn't stop crying as they lowered the coffin. I remembered all the good times, teaching him to tie his shoes, helping him with writing, teaching him to play handball, showing him how to drive, taking him to his first R-rated movie. All these happy moments flooded my mind, and all the shit he did to me, none of that mattered. I just stood there, silently crying while the earth covered him. Now I'm sitting in a hotel room, and for the first time in years, I don't feel that weight in my chest that had haunted me. Therapy didn't help. Anger management didn't help. Even meeting with Jaslyn didn't help. Even getting Luna back. Every positive change in my life hadn't removed this burden. But these last days with him, those moments before his death, they took that weight away. They took the anger away. And I don't know why. I don't know how. Well, that's the end of the story. Share in the comments how you feel, what you felt while listening to it. In my opinion, this is one of the most emotional stories on our channel. Reading this story, I reflected on many things in my own life. Should I forgive certain moments with certain people? And woven into this story is a kind of biblical narrative. You listen and think about all of it, about forgiveness, about trials that inevitably fall on everyone's life.
My wife cheated on me with her gym trainer, and when she asked for a divorce, she demanded half of everything we owned. What she didn't know was that our house and all our savings were legally registered under my father's name. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. I'm 35, and I've been working as an accountant at a local firm for almost a decade. I like to think of myself as a practical, level-headed guy. Maybe that's why I'm managing to stay calm through all this. My wife, Katie, is 33. We'd been together for about 5 years, married for 2, no kids, and honestly, looking back now, that might have been a blessing. After the wedding, she stopped working. She used to be in marketing, but said she wanted a break to focus on us. I didn't argue. I earned enough to support both of us and assumed it was temporary. We had a house, a comfortable amount of savings, nothing extravagant, but a stable, normal life. Then, gradually, something changed. Katie grew distant, she stayed out longer with friends or at the gym, avoided affection, got irritated whenever I asked what was wrong. At first, I chalked it up to stress, but the feeling that something was off kept growing, and unfortunately, I was right. One evening, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen without thinking. A message from someone named Derek. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby." I opened the chat. The messages were explicit, romantic, full of plans that didn't include me. She had been seeing him for months. I just stared at the screen, numb. This was the woman I trusted, the person I built a life with. But instead of anger, all I felt was emptiness. Maybe shock? Maybe my rational side kicking in. When Katie came out of the bathroom, I handed her the phone and calmly asked her to explain. She tried to brush it off at first. "It's just a joke, it's nothing serious." But when I read a few messages aloud, she realized lying was pointless. And then, without hesitation, she said, "I want a divorce." No apology, no tears, no guilt. Just cold, matter of fact. She admitted she'd been seeing Derek for a while and wasn't happy in our marriage anymore. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She was leaving for him. But what stunned me wasn't even the affair. It was what she said next. She wanted half of everything we owned. She even claimed she deserved it because she gave up her career for our relationship. Her entitlement was unbelievable, but I stayed calm, not because I'm some saint, but because I knew something she didn't. I agreed to the divorce, told her I wouldn't fight it. She looked shocked, probably expecting shouting or some dramatic meltdown, but I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. Here's what Katie never knew. Almost everything we owned was legally registered under my father's name. Years ago, when I first started earning good money, my dad suggested registering major assets like the house and most of my investments under him. He said it would protect me if anything ever went wrong, debts, lawsuits, or, well, exactly this. I didn't think much of it then. It just seemed like smart financial planning. So when Katie tried to demand half of our estate, she had no idea that legally I owned almost nothing. My car, a modest bank account, and a few personal items. That was it. The house belonged to my father. Most of the savings were on his accounts, too. To avoid a messy legal fight, I suggested mediation. She agreed, convinced she'd walk away with a small fortune. She had no clue that everything had been arranged years before she even met me. When the divorce process started, I told my dad everything. He wasn't thrilled, but he understood. We spoke with a lawyer to make sure all paperwork was solid, and it was flawless. Katie could demand all she wanted, but there was nothing for her to take. She went in expecting half a house and a pile of savings. She came out realizing I barely owned anything at all.
She wasted no time hiring an aggressive attorney, the kind of shark who promises to tear everything out of the other party. I hired a calm but experienced lawyer who specialized in cases with complicated financial structures. I didn't want a dramatic courtroom battle, but I also wasn't going to let Katie and her lawyer pressure me. The first step of the divorce was financial disclosure, and as you can probably guess, that did not go the way Katie expected. I provided all the documents the law required, but once she saw how little was actually in my name, her attorney stopped smirking. They both looked confused, maybe even suspicious, but they couldn't argue with the paperwork. Everything I submitted was true. There were no hidden accounts or secret assets. Katie snapped right there in the meeting, shouting that I was lying, calling me names. But I had shown everything I legally owned. After a few minutes of her screaming, I simply stood up and told her we could continue once she calmed down. And now I'm here, unsure whether I did the right thing. I agreed to give her half of everything, knowing she wouldn't get anywhere close to what she imagined. Update 1. Things begin to escalate. Right after the asset disclosure, Katie completely lost her composure. She was convinced I was hiding something. Her attorney wasn't much better. The look on their faces when they saw the tiny numbers next to my name was priceless. Within days, they demanded a deeper investigation. Katie kept repeating, "Where's the money? The house, the investments, everything we built?" She truly believed I had some giant stash of assets hidden somewhere. Her attorney hired a forensic accountant to dig through every transaction. I was a little nervous, not because I was guilty of anything, but because I knew this would drag the divorce out even longer.
After talking with my attorney and reviewing all documents again, it became clear they weren't going to find anything. Everything I submitted was 100% accurate. There wasn't a single trail that could lead back to the assets under my father's name. As the investigation continued, Katie became more irritated and desperate. She was used to getting what she wanted, and this time there was nothing to take. The realization that she'd walk away with almost nothing was unbearable for her. Her next move was to claim she had made a significant contribution to my career and our lifestyle. She insisted that by staying home and managing the house, I gave her the freedom to focus on work and succeed. Sure, sometimes her help made daily life easier, but I'm not the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. I'm a mid-level accountant. My income has been steady for years. There was no magical rise she could take credit for. But she kept pushing the narrative that she sacrificed her marketing career for me, even though she worked only briefly and quit by her own choice. Her attorney brought this up again and again, trying to frame me as someone who exploited her sacrifice. But there was no evidence to support that claim.
At one point, they even tried dragging my parents into the process. Katie wanted to prove that they had secretly given me money or helped me hide assets. And that was the moment I finally lost my patience. My parents had nothing to do with any of this, and involving them was a cheap, disgusting move. Thankfully, my lawyer shut that down immediately, but it showed just how desperate Katie had become. As the divorce dragged on, she switched to a different tactic. If she couldn't get what she wanted in court, she tried to ruin my reputation instead. She began telling everyone in our social circle that I had been hiding money from her for years, that I was financially abusive. I couldn't believe the lies she was spreading. Mutual friends told me she constantly complained that I was leaving her with nothing and had deceived her into thinking we had more than we actually did. She even went on social media, posting vague but obvious jabs about narcissist and betrayal. Some people sided with her. There are always those who automatically believe whoever cries the loudest. But most of our real friends knew the truth. They understood I wasn't capable of what she accused me of. Watching her drag my name through the mud just because things didn't go her way was painful. But I tried not to let it get to me. I knew the truth, and so did the people who mattered. Meanwhile, I focused on protecting myself. My lawyer and I stayed in constant communication, collecting every message, every demand, every attempt she made to twist the story. If things went to court, I wanted everything documented. I also gathered proof of her affair with Derek. Screenshots, their photos together, even statements from a couple of her friends who knew about the cheating. I didn't want to humiliate her, I just wanted the truth to be clear. On top of that, I prepared for what I knew was coming. Once it became obvious she wouldn't be getting half of everything, the real ugliness would begin. I kept my distance, focused on work, and handled the legal side quietly and carefully. Meanwhile, Derek's attitude started changing too. When Katie first told him she wanted to leave me for him, he seemed enthusiastic. They had some fantasy about starting a new life together. But as soon as the divorce turned into a nightmare, Derek began pulling away. Apparently, he wasn't as in love as she thought. From what I heard, he panicked when he realized being with her meant dealing with her financial mess. Rumors started spreading that he was losing clients at the gym because of the scandal. Nobody wants a trainer who sleeps with married women. He's now avoiding her, and she's finally beginning to realize this wasn't a fairy tale, but a delusion. Sometimes I almost feel sorry for her. Then I remember everything she did, and the sympathy disappears. I have mixed emotions. On one hand, yes, I'm relieved. I protected my money, and she's not walking away with what she expected. On the other hand, it's sad. This was still my marriage. I once loved her and believed we had a future. Watching it fall apart hurts, even if I know this outcome is for the best. Update 2. Things get even crazier. Since my last update, everything spiraled even further. Katie is in full-blown panic mode, and it's showing in the worst ways. She finally accepted that she won't get the payout she was counting on. So now she's trying to turn my life into hell. Her latest stunt is threatening to destroy my career. She told me outright that if I didn't be more generous,
she would make sure everyone in my office found out what a monster I supposedly am. At first, I wasn't even sure what she meant until she started showing up at my office unannounced. The first time, she pretended she just wanted to talk. But when I made it clear there was nothing left to discuss, she snapped, raising her voice, saying things like, "I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are." Luckily, I managed to get her out before it turned into a full-blown scene, but it's obvious she's becoming unpredictable. Back at her parents' house, where she's living now, things aren't great either. From what I heard, they support her, but they're not thrilled with the situation. Once she realized she wasn't getting the jackpot she imagined, she moved in with them, and apparently tensions there are growing too.
At this point, even her own parents seem to be realizing that her victim act is nothing more than a performance. Mutual friends told me she's been snapping at everyone, fighting with her family, and acting like she's on the verge of a breakdown. The legal side of everything has also become more chaotic. Katie's lawyer is desperately trying to dig up anything they can use against me. They even filed a motion to subpoena my parents and demand their financial records, despite my attorney repeatedly explaining that my parents' assets have nothing to do with this divorce. It's obvious they're trying to rattle me, but it isn't working. Her legal team has also requested statements from my coworkers, hoping to find hidden income or under-the-table payments. They're grabbing at straws, but they keep coming up empty. Every time we shut down one of their requests, another one pops up. The whole thing feels like an endless chess match. They try to counter every move I make, but so far I've managed to stay one step ahead thanks to my attorney, and thanks to the financial safeguards my father put in place years ago. Still, it's exhausting, and I'm not sure how much longer I can deal with this before the case finally goes to trial. As for mediation, we've attempted it twice, and both times were disasters. The first session lasted maybe 20 minutes. Katie refused to back down from demanding half the house and half the savings. My lawyer calmly stated the facts. The house is legally in my father's name, and the savings aren't remotely what she imagines. She didn't want to hear it. She stormed out, accused everyone of lying, and claimed the mediator was biased. The second attempt wasn't any better. This time, she arrived with an absurd list of demands: full ownership of the house, half of all assets, which barely exist, and alimony for at least 5 years. When my attorney explained, again, that none of this was legally justified, she lost control completely. She screamed that she gave up everything for me and that I was abandoning her with nothing. I sat there trying to stay composed, but inside I was boiling. She was the one who cheated, the one who walked away, and yet she paints me as the villain who destroyed her life? After that meeting, it became obvious. This divorce would only end in court. Meanwhile, Katie has been borrowing money from family and friends to keep paying her attorney. Clearly, she didn't expect the divorce to drag on this long, and now she's running out of resources. I honestly don't know how she plans to keep funding her overly aggressive lawyer, but that's no longer my problem. The more desperate she gets, the more unstable her behavior becomes. Friends told me she barely leaves the house and constantly complains to anyone who will listen that I've ruined her life. Even her own friends are starting to distance themselves. They're tired of the endless drama and the way she keeps replaying the victim narrative. It's clear that everything she hoped to gain from this divorce is slipping through her fingers. All the while, I'm doing my best to stay calm and strategic. Every accusation she throws at me, I counter with documentation. Every financial record they request, I provide. I have nothing to hide. My lawyer makes sure we follow the law down to the last detail, something I can't say for Katie's side. I've also been protecting my parents' privacy as much as possible. Her attempts to drag them into this mess make my blood boil. But thankfully, there are legal safeguards that prevent her from getting access to their financial documents. The fact that she even tried shows just how desperate she's become. She seems convinced that if she digs deep enough, she'll uncover some secret fortune. There is nothing to find. Update 3. The day of the hearing finally arrived, and the tension in the courtroom was intense. Katie testified first.
She immediately went on the offensive, insisting I had been hiding assets for years. She accused me of manipulating our finances, keeping money in secret accounts, and lying about our actual income. She played up the emotion, painting herself as someone who had been left with nothing after sacrificing her career for mine. At one point, she even cried on the stand, talking about how much she trusted me. But everything changed when my attorney presented the evidence of her affair with Derek. As soon as the messages, photos, and timeline of their relationship were revealed, everyone, the judge, the jury, and even the people in the back, understood the truth. The sympathetic victim image she tried to build collapsed instantly. She tried to brush it off, saying it was a mistake and irrelevant to the divorce. But it was too late. Her credibility was gone, and it became obvious that her financial demands were driven purely by greed. When it was my turn to testify, I stayed calm and stuck strictly to the facts.
My attorney had prepared me well, so I knew that any emotional outburst or attempt to justify myself would only hurt the case. I calmly explained how my assets had been placed under my father's ownership years before, how I fully disclosed every financial detail, and how I tried to resolve everything amicably through mediation. I also described her threats, her unstable behavior, and the smear campaign she had been running against me. My lawyer presented documentation refuting each of her accusations, both the legal claims and the lies she spread publicly, proving that none of it had any real foundation. We laid everything out clearly. The house belongs to my father, our savings are modest, and there is no secret stash of money she could claim a share of. The judge seemed to appreciate my composure and straightforwardness. I didn't try to paint Katie as a villain, but I also didn't sugarcoat anything. The facts spoke for themselves. Several key witnesses testified, and their statements finally put everything in its proper place. My father testified first. He explained the financial arrangement we put in place years ago, how the house is legally in his name, how the investments are under his control, and that everything was structured for long-term financial protection. He made it clear those assets are his, not mine, and that Katie has no legal claim to them. Next, one of my coworkers testified. Katie's legal team tried to suggest I'd been getting under-the-table payments or hidden bonuses, but he shut that down immediately. He confirmed that I earn a standard salary and have no secret income. His testimony was crucial, proving her accusations were baseless. The judge saw that there was no conspiracy, just a straightforward, transparent financial structure that Katie never bothered to understand. After several days of testimony and legal arguments, the judge finally delivered the ruling. Hearing that the decision was in my favor felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest. Katie's demands for half the house and half our savings were completely denied. The judge ruled that since the house and most of the assets belonged to my father, Katie has no right to them. The only thing she was awarded was minimal, short-term alimony, barely enough to cover a fraction of her legal fees, let alone the lifestyle she imagined. He also specifically noted that her affair and her lack of contribution to our finances influenced the decision. He saw right through her attempts to play the victim and issued a fair verdict. When he finished reading the decision, I felt an enormous sense of relief. Months of stress, constant accusations, the fear of losing everything, all of it vanished in an instant. Legally, I was finally free. Katie, on the other hand, didn't take the ruling well. The moment the judge concluded, she burst into tears, yelling that the system was unfair and that I had stolen what she deserved. She ran out of the courtroom, leaving her lawyer looking stunned. I'm not sure what she expected, but it was obvious she wasn't ready for a loss. As for me, I felt only relief. I thanked my attorney, who did an incredible job, and walked out of the courthouse. My phone was exploding with messages, friends and family congratulating me. The news spread quickly, and soon everyone in our community knew how the case ended. It felt good knowing the truth had finally come out, and I could start moving on. But Katie didn't stop. Right outside the courthouse, she caused another scene in front of a small crowd, shouting that I manipulated the system and that she would appeal. The problem is, she has no money for an appeal. Her attorney had already hinted that her funds were gone, and now, from what I've heard, she's still borrowing from relatives and friends just to stay afloat. I'm endlessly grateful to my father for his foresight. I can't even imagine the mess I'd be in without his planning. And I'm grateful to my family, friends, and colleagues who didn't abandon me when she tried to destroy my reputation. Now, for the first time in a long while, I'm looking toward the future with hope. I know it will take time to recover, emotionally and financially, but I'm ready to rebuild. This whole experience taught me a lot, and I won't make the same mistakes again. Right now, all I want is to return to a normal life and finally enjoy some peace.